Chapter 217. Was that really a dark cloud? No, of course not. What if it was, and there was no thunder, lightning, or wind? That strange energy fluctuation was a sign that the space was about to open. A loud and clear roar came from Chiyu. At this moment, the aura he exuded no longer had any sense of sadness. That vigorous and vast aura, along with an incomparably huge amount of energy, shone from his body. The Zodiac guardian warriors in the inner circle were slightly better off because they were stronger. The disciples of the four big families in the outer circle knelt on one knee without exception. Under the shroud of the vast aura, they felt a sense of worship in their hearts. Black robes and white hair, Chiyu looked so powerful at this moment, like a god descending to the world. At this moment, these youths from the four places of the Yen Huang land truly understood the huge gap between them and the expert in front of them. If Snow Girl had enough power to activate the Kunlun mirrors, with the Kunlun mirrors as the center, activating the lost formation would be enough to tear the space and achieve the goal of traversing time and space. However, whether it was activating the energy of the Kunlun mirrors or activating the lost formation, the energy required was huge. The amount of energy required was enormous, and it was something that the Snow Maidens were unable to achieve. Therefore, if she wanted to traverse time and space again, she could only rely on the help of Chiyu and the other Zodiac guardian warriors. In these few days of cultivation, Chiyu had carefully considered the problem of activating the Kunlun mirrors. Therefore, although it was extremely difficult to activate the Kunlun mirrors without the Xianyuan sword, he was still prepared. But he was still prepared for it. Would it be impossible without the Xianyuan sword? Of course not. The Xianyuan sword could tear the empty mountain apart, and his Kirin arms could also tear the sky. In order to raise his power to the limit, Chiyu's body began to change. His left hand was always pressed on Snow Girl's chest, transferring the huge energy from himself and the 6 Zodiac guardian warriors to Snow Girl. At the same time, he also began his own attribute mutation. The Kirin beads began to light up. Purple, blue, red, and green lights began to circulate around it. The loud and clear howl turned into an angry roar towards the sky. The black clothes on Chiyu's body disappeared in an instant. Due to the increase in his strength, Chiyu could now control his energy exquisitely and store the clothes into the Kirin Pearl before the mutation began. After all, clothes also cost money. Suddenly, a huge figure of light soared into the sky. It was a charging Kirin. It had a black body and silver hair, and it stood on a 4-colored cloud. The instant it charged into the sky, its silver light and 4-colored cloud lit up the sky above the Dragon Realm courtyard. 4 beams of light of different colors descended from the sky and gathered at the bottom. A strange phenomenon appeared. Kirin transformed. It had been a long time since Chiyu had used this method to trigger his true form mutation. With his current strength, he could complete the transformation in an instant. However, after these days of cultivation, he gradually understood that only by using the power of heaven and earth to complete the true form mutation could he truly unleash the power of the true form mutation. It would also make the mutation more complete. His long white hair was draped over his back. Under the effect of the true form mutation, it gradually turned into a shiny silver color. The faint red in his eyes disappeared, and they were as black as ink. They were like 2 black gems without any impurities. At this moment, Chiyu was surprised to find that, under the effect of the true form mutation, his eyesight had temporarily recovered. His entire body was covered in a layer of black scales. His right arm was the most special. On the black armor there were silver patterns inlaid. It was a series of silver whorls with spikes protruding from the ribs. It looked like a silver sun. The Kirin Pearl directly appeared on the chest area of the black armor. On Chiyu's forehead, the red whip-shaped pattern that represented Kirin's red was slightly protruding outwards. It shone with a dazzling light, and it looked like a red gem was inlaid on his forehead. The huge Kirin silhouette in the sky continued to emit intense light. Its black body, silver fur, and the two-colored horn on its head were all emitting a tyrannical aura of a king of Kirin. The mutation did not end there. After the first stage of Kirin's true form mutation was completed, the second stage had already begun. As he borrowed the powerful strength of the 6 Zodiac Guardian warriors, he could now better absorb the energy molecules in the air. Kirin's silhouette instantly rushed to where Chi Yu's body was. It enveloped him completely and began to fuse with him. The black scale armor quickly changed. The original single layer of scale armor turned into 3 layers of compound scales. The layers of scales protected each other. His entire body suddenly swelled up. Then, a pair of black Qilin wings instantly rushed out from the scale armor and spread to both sides of his body. The Kirin pearl on his chest seemed to expand a little. The entire Kirin pearl turned completely silver. It was particularly eye-catching on the black Kirin armor. The silver halo expanded outwards like a breastplate. The Kirin armor on his shoulder also turned into 3 layers. One layer was stacked on top of the other and extended downward. The bottom layer protected his waist from the side. At the same time, a circle of special-shaped scales stood up on Chi Yu's neck like a collar, protecting his neck. The silver patterns on Kirin's arm gradually expanded. A completely silver image of Kirin appeared on his right arm. The position of the image of Kirin's head was right between his thumb and index finger. Layers of distorted light constantly surrounded Chi Yu's arm, causing it to tremble slightly. Slowly raising Kirin's arm, Chi Yu felt the changes in the energy in his body. Just as he was about to make a move, he suddenly heard a voice. It was a voice that filled his heart with excitement. Chi Yu, your energy has finally awakened me. It was Wen Ting. That's right, it was Wen Ting. When Chi Yu raised his energy to its peak, Wen Ting's voice also appeared. The sleeping soul had finally awakened under the influence of the huge energy. Ting Ting, is it you? Is that you? Chi Yu cried out in his heart. Fool, of course it's me. Although I'm in a deep sleep, I can still feel your deep sorrow. I didn't really die. Isn't it? You fool, don't be stupid anymore. How did your energy become so powerful? Could it be that you've already finished absorbing the energy and restored your strength to its previous peak state? No, not yet. I'm going to open the space-time gate again. Let's go back to the era of the ancient beasts. This time, I will lead all the Zodiac Guardian God warriors and the young elites of the 4 families. The trip to the west made me see the lack of strength. Only by improving the overall strength of the Eastern Guardians can I prevent the same tragedy from happening again. Ting Ting, are you okay? You're the fool. It's not worth it to sacrifice your life for me. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Tears flowed down from the corner of Chi Yu's eyes. At this moment, he had even forgotten what he was going to do. His heart was filled with emotions. Wen Ting's voice sounded very gentle. No, you're wrong. I have my own selfish motives. If you die, wouldn't I become a widow? It's definitely worth it to sacrifice my body to save your rebirth. Because I know that when your strength reaches its peak, I still have a chance to return to your side. Even if you can't reach that realm, when you awaken my soul, we can still communicate. My body will fuse with yours. I have already become a part of your body. This is much better than you dying. Don't be sad. If you miss me, work hard in your cultivation. I will, I definitely will. Chi Yu said excitedly. Even if it's just for you, I will definitely reach the peak that you said as soon as possible. Ting Ting, do you know how much I miss you? Everything in the past was my fault. Can you forgive me? Wen Ting said softly, well, let's not talk about this first. Your energy has been raised to the saturation realm. Hurry up and start. No wonder you can condense such a huge amount of energy. It turns out that you borrowed the power of others to do it. I will wait for the day you resurrect me. Right, I'm afraid the current energy is not enough for me to break through space. Kirin's arm is strong. but it is not as sharp as the Xianyuan sword. Continue to transform. Only when you reach that level can you truly break through space and time and complete space travel. Qiyu was stunned. What transformation? I'm already at the second transformation. You mean? Wen Ting said, have you forgotten how we defeated the Bull Demon King? Qiyu's heart moved. But I'm afraid I can't do it alone. Wen Ting said unhappily, are you alone? Our fusion now is much more thorough than the last time. What is sleeping is only the soul of Xianyuan, but the body of the Xianyuan sword will not sleep. You can use our fusion power to borrow the energy of the Xianyuan sword. Although you can't use the Xianyuan sword, you can still complete the ultimate transformation. Use your heart to call. You are the true master of the Xianyuan sword. Qiyu regained his eyesight. His eyes became firm. I understand. Thank you, Tingting. Using his heart to call, Qiyu completely converged his spiritual power into his body. He used the Kirin's armor as a foundation to form a barrier. His heart was completely immersed in the huge energy in his body and his perception of the Xianyuan sword. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees more clearly. Just like what Wen Ting said, Qiyu was the true master of the Xianyuan sword. Xuanyuan's soul was only a part of the Xianyuan sword. A faint golden light began to gradually appear on Qiyu's demon-like body. A scorching current burned in his heart. That was the energy that Wen Ting left for him. When his body was completely fused with Qiyu, Wen Ting was afraid that his body would not be able to handle the huge amount of energy. So, she left the energy of her giant beast relic in Qiyu's heart. At this moment, the huge amount of energy had already condensed into a red bead. Although it could not be absorbed by Qiyu, it was just the right time to release it when he needed to undergo the ultimate transformation. The huge scorching energy suddenly ignited with the Kirin's red hidden between Qiyu's eyebrows as a medium. His long silver hair instantly turned red. The Kirin bead turned an unprecedented golden color. The diamond shape of the Kirin's red on his forehead suddenly shot out a red light, instantly illuminating every inch of his body. Then, the Kirin mirror flew out from his left hand, and the Kirin illusion flew out from his right hand. The three types of energy simultaneously condensed towards the Kirin bead. The huge amount of energy instantly spread. The four colors of gold, silver, red and black were replaced by light ribbons, enveloping Qiyu's body. His long red hair continued to extend behind him until it reached his ankles. Suddenly, the reddish-gold light erupted from the Kirin bead. It merged with Qiyu's and Wen Ting's energy, forming a ball of light that stopped in front of Qiyu's chest. There was a clanging sound. The solid reddish-gold breastplate covered Qiyu's firm chest muscles, perfectly merging with the original Kirin armor. Then, the breastplate extended up and down, extending to the broad shoulder plate, and down to cover Qiyu's waist. The huge amount of energy spread in an instant. The reddish-gold light flowed to every corner of Qiyu's body, forming an incomparably gorgeous reddish-gold armor. Every part of Qiyu's body was covered perfectly. The huge amount of energy continued to spread from his body. On the reddish-gold armor, blood-red lines appeared, as if there was blood flowing within. A pair of reddish-gold wings suddenly spread out from Qiyu's back. The wings were the same size as before, but the reddish-gold light on them was extraordinarily bright. Every single reddish-gold feather had lines clearly visible, and that huge amount of energy spread out in an instant. However, it was not over yet. At the same time that the reddish-gold wings appeared, a layer of dark red light suddenly lit up behind Qiyu. That was the energy aura of Kirin concealment. Then, the dark red light transformed into a pair of dark red wings, appearing below the reddish-gold wings. Together with the black wings that Kirin armor had obtained during the second stage of mutation, there were a total of 3 pairs of 6 wings on his back, extending outwards. At the top were the reddish-gold wings, and at the bottom were the black wings. The dark red Kirin concealment's wings appeared at the bottom. A layer of golden light appeared in front of Chi-Yu, covering his face. The light of the sun, moon, and stars shone from his body, bringing with it layers of light and shadow, merging into the reddish-gold armor. In an instant, the blood-red lines on the reddish-gold armor began to flow. On the smooth surface of the armor, patterns of the sun, moon, and stars appeared. The solar-lunisolar starry crimson gold armor had finally reappeared. The main reason why Chi-Yu and Wen-Ting called it the ultimate transformation was that when the energy was perfectly integrated, it had also completely integrated all of Chi-Yu's abilities, including Kirin's octatic treasures and the Xianyuan sword. If Chi-Yu had been able to transform into this armor when he was in the West, the final outcome would have been very difficult to predict. Unfortunately, with Chi-Yu's own strength, even if he had recovered to his peak, he would still not be able to do it. Although Wen-Ting had already integrated into his body, his own strength was still not enough. This time, he was only able to complete the transformation with the help of the 6 Zodiac Guardian warriors. Back when he was fighting the Bull Demon King, the solar-lunisolar starry crimson gold armor only allowed him to use heaven and human oneness once before disappearing. How Chi-Yu wished that he could truly possess the power of the solar-lunisolar starry crimson gold armor. But that would only be possible after he reached the 8 clouds. At that time, he would have enough energy to maintain the solar-lunisolar starry crimson gold armor and use this extremely powerful ultimate transformation. In fact, even Chi-Yu himself did not know that the solar-lunisolar starry crimson gold armor was not an ability given to him by the Xianyuan sword or Wen-Ting. It was an ability that belonged to him. As one of the 4 auspicious clouds, Kirin, he had obtained several special and powerful abilities after reaching the 9 clouds level. He was one of the 4 auspicious clouds, Ink Kirin. How could an ordinary Qilin compare to it? The energy of the Xianyuan sword and Wen-Ting only helped him to use this ultimate transformation earlier. Wen-Ting's voice disappeared. Everyone present was shocked by the changes that had occurred in Chi-Yu's body. Even the Zodiac Guardian God warriors were shocked. Only now did they realize how terrifying their boss's true strength was. What the solar-lunisolar starry crimson gold armor brought about was an extremely powerful energy wave. The dazzling radiance that was as strong as the sun and the noble and domineering figure made everyone's heart tremble. Chi-Yu's right arm, which was raised high in the air, shook violently. The reddish-gold radiance that had been flowing downwards all gathered towards his right arm at this moment. He did not have the Xianyuan sword, but he still had Kirin's arm. The reddish-gold radiance caused the image of the Kirin on Kirin's arm to become clearer and clearer. A huge amount of energy passed through his arm and turned into a reddish-gold energy Kirin. A domineering voice sounded from Chi-Yu's mouth. Lin Bing Doja formation, Kirin's arm, break the heavens. The reddish-gold radiance suddenly soared into the sky. The reddish-gold energy Kirin let out a roar and broke through the sky in the blink of an eye. The black space was dyed reddish-gold. The violent roar was many times louder than thunder. The space above the dragon field courtyard distorted violently. This time, Kirin's arm really broke the heavens. Under the effect of the massive reddish-gold energy, a series of acronyms began to appear in the air. At this moment, the immortal in the mirror's voice came from Snow Girl's mouth, with the Kunlun mirrors as the center, break the chains of time and space. Under the guidance of the underworld, move forward. A dark green light rose from Snow Girl's chest. The Kunlun mirrors showed its magical power. The small cracks that appeared in the air gradually solidified under the dark green light. Then, with the cracks as the center, they rapidly expanded. In just a few blinks of an eye, a huge black hole had already appeared above the dragon field courtyard. The broken space looked terrifying. Under the guidance of the Kunlun mirrors, the black hole descended from the sky and shrouded everyone present. Under the guidance of the Kunlun mirrors, the black hole descended from the sky and shrouded everyone present. Chi-Yu retracted his right hand. With a wave of his hand, He had already stored everyone's belongings into his Kirin bead. At this moment, a panicked voice suddenly sounded. A green figure jumped over the wall outside the Dragonfield courtyard and quickly rushed towards the black hole. "Brother Chi-Yu, what's wrong?" Amidst the delicate voice, Chi-Yu clearly saw that it was the plant soul. She had a panicked look on her face. She was clearly shocked by the scene in front of her. At the same time he appeared, the black hole suddenly shrank. Using the Kunlun mirrors as the guide to travel through time and space was finally completed. Other than Chi-Yu and Snow Girl, everyone else was swallowed by the black hole in fear. A strange feeling spread through everyone's heart. Although their minds were still awake, they felt as if they had lost their bodies at that moment. Gradually, in that endless darkness, his spirit also gradually fell asleep, and he entered that darkness with terror. "Ah!" Rain Eyes suddenly let out a cry of surprise, causing the 12 constellation guardians in the Parthenon temple to open their eyes at the same time. 24 pairs of eyes were focused on their goddess Athena. After obtaining the approval of the artifact of Athena, Yamu's strength increased exponentially. These days, in order to prevent herself from thinking about that cold and calm face, she had focused all her attention on cultivation. It was also during this period of cultivation that she had completely awakened the power of the goddess Athena. The fusion with the artifact had also been perfected. "Miss, what's wrong?" Mephistopheles asked with concern. Yamu's face looked terrible. Her pale face did not look like Athena at all. His aura disappeared. It disappeared again. What's going on? Could it be that his injuries were too severe, or that his life aura did not fully recover and he died? After becoming the true goddess Athena, her spiritual perception had also become stronger than before. Although she could not really use her spiritual power to cross the sea to feel everything on Chi-Yu's side, she could still feel the aura of Kirin in the Far East. But she could also feel the aura of Kirin in the Far East. Chi-Yu used the power of the Kunlun mirrors to cross over again. She naturally felt it at the first moment. It was a complete disappearance. In her understanding, such a situation would only occur after death. Yuyun looked at Yu Mao in shock. Of course, she knew that her sister would have such an expression on her face because of one person. "Did you say that his aura disappeared?" "No, it can't be. That day, his life aura had already awakened. It's impossible for him to die from serious injuries. Could it be that he met another strong enemy? But he has the protection of the Zodiac guardian warriors in the east. Who could hurt him in Yanhuang? Unless..." Yamu's expression changed. A faint golden light lit up, and in the next instant, she was already by Yuyun's side. The same face, but different aura. Perfect looks, this pair of sisters gave off a special feeling. "Sister, do you know something? Tell me, unless it's something?" Yuyun looked at Yamu and said coldly, "Unless it's the Pope. I'm afraid he's not satisfied with what happened last time. He also knows that one day, Chi-Yu will find him for revenge." Chi-Yu had single-handedly defeated 4 red-robed archbishops. With such strength, I'm afraid even the Pope won't be able to sleep well. Therefore, it's very likely that he will go to Yanhuang to assassinate Chi-Yu before he fully recovers his strength. Otherwise, I really can't think of anyone who could make Chi-Yu's aura disappear completely. Hearing Yuyun's words, Yamu couldn't help but frown. Could it really be him? Mephistopheles, contact Vatican immediately. I want to speak to the Pope. Mephistopheles sighed. Although he was unwilling, he still walked out of the temple. No electronic devices were allowed in the temple. He understood that although Yamu had become the true goddess Athena, however, not being able to kill Chi-Yu that day had left a huge shadow in her heart. And Chi-Yu himself had become this goddess Athena's only flaw. Right now, he really hoped that Chi-Yu was really dead. If that was the case, the flaw in Yamu's heart would be smaller. Actually, although Yuyun's judgment was reasonable, it wasn't very possible. Although Pope Marty wanted to destroy Chi-Yu when he was injured, The 4 cardinals were all severely injured in that battle. 2 of the archangels had used the sacrifice skill. How would he have the time to chase after Chiyu now? After all, to the Pope, the cardinals were extremely important. Using holy power to heal 4 people at the same time was already a huge burden for the Pope. The darkness disappeared and light reappeared. Chiyu's vision had disappeared again, but his mind was clear. Although his eyes couldn't see, his spiritual power could clearly feel the presence of the air, as well as the huge natural energy aura. He knew that the teleportation was successful. His left hand felt warm and soft. The soft and bouncy touch made him subconsciously squeeze it, but in return, he let out a soft moan. At this moment, he woke up from his teleportation and immediately recalled everything that had happened. His left hand was pressing on the Kunlun mirrors, transferring energy to Snow Girl. The Kunlun mirrors were in front of Snow Girl's chest, so the warmth in his hand was, with a moan, Snow Girl didn't dodge. She let Chiyu hold on to her chest and called out softly, "Daddy." Chiyu understood what was going on and jumped in fright. He hurriedly let go of the Snow Lady's hand and said in a panic, "I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose." Snow Girl moved closer to Chiyu's body and rested her head on his firm chest, but she didn't say a word. She had already wrapped her arms around Chiyu's waist and pressed her body tightly against him. Chiyu could clearly feel that Snow Girl's breathing was a little hurried, and her body temperature was rising rapidly. Being experienced, he naturally knew what was going on. He quickly struggled out of Snow Girl's embrace. "Snow, no, you can't." "Daddy, why?" Snow Girl looked at Chiyu's naked body in disappointment. At this moment, even Chiyu himself had forgotten that he had already taken off his clothes when he was undergoing Kirin's true form mutation. Chiyu was silent for a moment before saying, "Because you are my daughter. I can't and I don't want to. I'm sorry, Snow." How is everyone's situation? It was impossible to say that he didn't have any impulses in his heart, especially when Snow Girl was hugging him and calling him daddy. That kind of special stimulation caused Chiyu's body to have a reaction. "They are all unconscious, only we are awake." "Daddy, you're lying. Don't you understand Snow's heart?" Snow Girl said angrily. Chiyu smiled bitterly and said, "Snow, don't be silly. Daddy really can't. I'm your daddy. It's impossible between us. Your biological father sacrificed his life for me. I will definitely replace him to protect you. How can I do such a thing?" Snow Girl took a step forward and stuck close to Chiyu again. Just as Chiyu was about to dodge, he suddenly felt his erect lower body tighten. He was actually held by Snow Girl's cold hand. "Daddy, your body has already told me that you're lying. In fact, you want to, don't you?" "Snow doesn't want anything. I don't want status. I don't want anything else. I just want to be with Daddy. Daddy, don't push me away, okay? I've already lost my father. Do you still have the heart to push Snow away from you? Daddy, let me be your lover, okay? I won't tell anyone. This is a secret between us." His burning erection was held by the cold hand. The intense stimulation caused Chiyu's body to tremble. Snow Girl's words made him unable to harden his heart to push her away again. However, his instinctive reaction was getting stronger and stronger. Chiyu was really afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and would devour this little vixen. "Quickly let go, Snow Girl. We can't do this. It's not that Daddy doesn't want to. This is a man's natural physiological reaction." Chiyu was already a little flustered. "No, I won't let go. I've waited so long for this opportunity. Daddy, what's wrong with Snow? Why won't you give Snow a chance? Daddy, please take Snow. I really like Daddy." She clenched her fists tightly and even moved them slightly. Chiyu also hadn't done it for a long time. Under the stimulation of Snow Girl, the hormones in his body were rapidly secreting. As the saying goes, the harder a man's lower body is, the softer his heart is. His rationality was gradually collapsing. "Good Snow Girl, listen to me. Quickly let go. You're a girl. You should be more reserved. Even if you like Daddy, you need to give Daddy a process of acceptance, right? Without any emotional foundation, how can we have a relationship? Let's get through this first. Chapter 2:18. Chi-Yu had never thought that such words would come out from a girl's mouth. Moreover, it was a beautiful girl like Snow Girl. For a moment, he really didn't know what to say. And Snow Girl had already pressed herself against him. Chi-Yu realized that she was still wearing clothes just now, but now she was pressing herself against his smooth skin. That ice-cold touch immediately caused the lust in his heart to erupt like a volcano. No, swear you can't. If you do this again, Dad will really get angry. This time, Chi-Yu's tone was finally firmer, because his line of defense was about to be breached. As if she didn't hear Chi-Yu's words, Snow Girl tightly pressed against his body, holding that firm little hand even tighter. She giggled and said, "Dad, it's jumping, it's so cute." "You, swear, listen to Dad. We really can't. Even on the level of a man and a woman, you can't satisfy me. If we really have a relationship, it will only make Dad's body more uncomfortable." In the past, Master Zagru once told Dad that there must be 4 women to satisfy Dad's desire. If you tease Dad like this, it will only make Dad more painful. There was no other way, he had to use his trump card. He couldn't push her away, she was holding on there, even if he wanted to run away. Chi-Yu was a little dizzy. After listening to Chi-Yu's words, Snow Girl was stunned for a moment. Really? Being with Shue Air will make Dad more uncomfortable? Yes, quickly let go of Dad. You've already made Dad very uncomfortable. Chi-Yu was really uncomfortable now, it was very difficult to endure. If it was in the past, he was afraid that he would have long lost his patience. After all, the current him was much more mature than before, and also much more rational. Therefore, at this critical moment, he was barely able to maintain a trace of the situation. "Dad, I can let you go, but you have to promise me to be your lover," secretly. It was the first time Chi-Yu had seen Snow Girl's stubbornness. Taking a deep breath, Chi-Yu tried to divert his attention from his lower body. "All right, as long as you're willing to let go. Daddy will promise you." Little ancestor, quickly let go. Chi-Yu had no choice but to promise her for the time being in order to get out of this sea of bitterness. However, he didn't expect that Snow Girl's intelligence was not lower than his. "That's great. Daddy finally wants Shwer. Snow wouldn't make her father feel any worse. Just a little bit. It proves that Daddy wants share." Before Chi-Yu could understand what was going on, 2 slender and supple thighs had already wrapped around his waist. Those slightly cold thighs clamped tightly onto his waist, and a strong sensation came from the rubbing of their skin. Chi-Yu only felt the Snow Lady's small hand move, sending his erect tip to a warm and moist place. After all, he couldn't see it, so when he reacted quickly, he saw the Snow Lady. After all, he was still half a beat too late. At the same time that Snow Girl placed his erect tip on the warm and moist place, she sat down without hesitation. "Ah!" 2 screams came from Snow Girl and Chi-Yu almost at the same time. Chi-Yu screamed because he knew that he was in trouble. At the same time, it was also because his erection had already broken through the layers of obstruction. Amidst the incomparably comfortable friction, it deeply penetrated into the most warm and moist place. As for Snow Girl, she screamed because of the tearing pain in her lower body. However, she didn't stop at all. Only when the erection deeply penetrated into her body did she stop. Her arms wrapped around Chi-Yu's back, and her whole body was like an octopus tightly wrapped around Chi-Yu's body. At this moment, the 2's most private parts were also tightly intertwined. "Snow, you lied to me." Chi-Yu's hands had already grabbed onto Snow Girl's plump and supple snowy buttocks because he wanted to stop her earlier. However, it was too late to do anything now. He grabbed her plump buttocks. His rationality finally melted like ice. Snow Girl endured the pain in her lower body and bit Chi-Yu's shoulder, saying, "I didn't lie to Daddy. Since Daddy has already agreed to let me be your lover, you should at least show me something. If I don't give Snow's most precious thing to Daddy, how can I prove my identity as your lover? Don't worry, Daddy, Snow won't make you feel worse. I'll get up immediately. Anyway, the most precious thing has already been given to Daddy. I've said it just now. Just a little bit and I'll be fine. It's so painful. If I knew it would be so painful, I would woo. Snow Girl's cherry lips were already sealed by Chi-Yu. If he could still endure at this moment, then he wasn't a man. Still want to get up? Get up my ass. It had already become a fact. Chi-Yu's hands that were grabbing onto Snow Girl's snowy buttocks no longer had any intention to lift her up. When Chi-Yu was finally clear-headed, he only felt that he had been raped, and it was by his own daughter. Since he couldn't resist successfully, then he might as well try to enjoy it. Snow Girl's somewhat cold and delicate body, her perfect and slender thighs, and every inch of her delicate skin had become the best fuel, completely igniting Chi-Yu's desire. Moving his body, Chi-Yu had already brought Snow Girl's delicate body to the front of a big tree through the sensing of the source of nature. Soft grass and leaves grew from the ground at an amazing speed, cushioning the back of Snow Girl. Chi-Yu pressed her delicate body against the big tree, and then he kissed Snow Girl's lip. "You little devil!" The small electric motor started, and as Snow Girl's painful moans gradually became more and more charming, the power of the electric motor also became greater and greater. Wave after wave of strong stimulation, Snow Girl was sent to the peak for the first time. The burning erection filled her heart with a feeling of fullness. Her thighs tightly clamped Chi-Yu's waist, and passively cooperated. Snow Girl's body was also transformed by the source of nature. At this moment, she had long forgotten what the Mirror Fairy had said. It was impossible for the mirror-trapping immortal to stop the two of them from having a relationship. After all, it was Snow Girl who took the initiative. What's more, after traveling through time, although her mind was awake, she was very weak at this time, and there was not enough energy to stop anything. At this time, the form of the Mirror Fairy was no longer Snow Girl's bra. In order to accumulate energy, she had completely integrated into Snow Girl's body. The Snow Lady experienced intense pleasure and orgasm again and again, causing the pitiful Mirror Immortal to fall into a state of confusion. She could also feel what the Snow Lady could feel, and in fact, she could feel it even more intensely. Dad, Snow is going to fly again. As Snow Girl's delicate body violently convulsed for the fourth time, Chi-Yu let out a low roar. The powerful sprint exerted the power of the small electric motor to the limit. Snow Girl's call brought him a strong stimulation. He cast aside all of his apprehensions, and when that stirring sensation reached its peak, he pinned the Snow Maiden tightly against the tree trunk. Bursts of scorching life essence slapped against the Emperor's heart snow lotus flower's stamen again and again, sending the Emperor's heart snow lotus from its peak to its peak again. Hugging Snow Girl's delicate body, he turned around and sat down with his back against the tree. His firm and erect body that had not yet softened was still in that warm and burning place. Snow Girl's mind was already a little muddled. She kept murmuring, calling for her dad. Gently patting Snow Girl's back, Chi-Yu panted a little and said, "You little girl, what do you want Dad to do?" Snow Girl leaned on Chi-Yu's shoulder. "You promised my dad that you will take care of me forever. I don't want you to be my dad anymore, I want to be your lover. If it wasn't for today's opportunity, how could you accept me? I won't give you any trouble. In front of everyone, you are still my dad. Only when we are together, I will be your lover. Is that okay?" It was already like this, how could Chi-Yu say no? Sighing lightly, he said, "Snow, I'm not worthy of you. I'm not a good man. Ting-Ting died because of me, and even you almost lost your life because of me." Snow Girl suddenly covered Chi-Yu's mouth. "Don't say any more. No matter what kind of person you are, I like you now. That's enough." Dad cried until his eyes went blind because of Mom's death. It was you who saved me from the abyss of pain. I'm afraid everyone will wake up soon. I'm going to get up. Everything that happened between him and Snow Girl flashed in Chi-Yu's eyes. He knew that he had an additional responsibility. Although this responsibility had existed for a long time, at this moment the nature of the responsibility had changed. Could he really act like Snow Girl said that nothing had happened? If that was the case, he didn't deserve to be a man. However, in this situation, it was indeed not suitable to tell everyone about the changed relationship between him and Snow Girl. He had to do more important things first. The two stood up. The moment their bodies separated, their hearts felt empty at the same time. Venting on Snow Girl made Chi-Yu's body and mind feel much better. He couldn't help but be surprised by Snow Girl's physical condition. Even Ryue couldn't bear it easily under his galloping, but Snow Girl seemed to be fine. It was Snow Girl who quietly told him after putting on her clothes. Turned out that as a plant, she had a very strong ability to repair her body. Although every part of her body was no different from an ordinary person, her self-repair ability was far beyond that of an ordinary person. After experiencing the energy baptism of the source of nature, this situation became even more obvious. Snow Girl stood quietly beside Chi-Yu. Since returning from the west, her pretty face showed a smile for the first time. If Chi-Yu could see that gentle and satisfied smile, he would definitely be moved. The ancient behemoth era and the modern era really couldn't be compared. The natural energy here was many times more powerful than in the modern era. Here, Chi-Yu's source of nature could be expanded infinitely. Even his mental strength had become stronger because of the abundant natural energy here. The natural energy seemed to have sensed that the source of nature was not enough. Without him deliberately activating it, the huge natural energy had already begun to condense in his body. The warmth constantly wrapped around his body, increasing the energy in his body more and more powerful. Chi-Yu's mental energy spread out in all directions, enveloping everyone's auras in his own mental world. Although he could not see with his eyes, the current him was able to grasp everyone's situation more clearly than with his eyes. Everyone's body was fine, but their minds were temporarily in a deep sleep. Snow Girl was right. Although the young people of the four major families were still in a deep sleep, the Zodiac Guardian warriors were already in a state of sleep. What surprised Chi-Yu was that apart from him and Snow Girl, the first to be in a state of sleep was not the Zodiac Guardian warriors, but plant souls. Ah, where is this place? The plant soul rubbed her hazy eyes and slowly sat up from the ground. Before she opened her eyes, she felt that her body was in the most perfect world in her mind. The nature energy around her body was much stronger than before, and her body had completely integrated into this world. The pure nature energy was wrapping around her body, causing it to sway slightly. Since her body had been transformed by Chi-Yu's natural energy, even if she didn't deliberately cultivate according to her own cultivation method, the natural energy in the air would still slowly integrate into her body. As a plant manipulator, how could she not be shocked? The plant soul's vision gradually recovered. The first thing she saw was the huge mountain range not far away. The towering mountains looked so clear. It was as if the air did not exist. It was truly transparent, without a single flaw. The surrounding air was a little cold, but the huge natural energy made the plant's soul feel unprecedentedly comfortable. Other than the feeling that Chi-Yu had given her back then, the current environment was the most intoxicating to her. The plant's soul looked around in confusion and joy. She quickly found Chi-Yu. She quickly jumped up and ran to Chi-Yu's side. "Brother Chi-Yu, what's going on? What happened just now, and where is this place?" Chi-Yu smiled faintly and turned around. He pointed at the vast expanse of primordial forest behind him and said, "This is a beautiful place. We will be staying here for a period of time from now on. I can't tell you where this place is. Do you like it here?" "I like it, I really like it," the plant soul said without hesitation. The air here is so fresh. Even the sky is so blue, as if there is no pollution. Brother Chiyu, how did you find this place? Chiyu said, That's a secret. It's fine as long as you like it. I think this is the most suitable place for you to cultivate. I hope that in less than half a year your natural energy will have a breakthrough. The plant soul jumped up happily. That's great, it's so comfortable here. The surrounding air makes me feel like I'm in a mother's embrace. It's the first time I've been intoxicated by the environment. Even Hawaii, which used to obey orders, can't compare to the air here. She was so excited that her speech was a little incoherent. Indeed, for a natural energy cultivator like her, there was no better place than the ancient giant beast. The Zodiac guardian god warriors gradually woke up after the plant soul woke up. At this moment, the difference in strength between them could be seen. The first to wake up was naturally Ryue. When she first woke up, her reaction was almost the same as the plant soul. The surrounding air and the majestic Kunlun mountain range deeply shocked this T-Rex. Her eyes immediately found Chiyu, and at the same time, she also saw the large forest behind Chiyu. The blue sky was like a sapphire without any impurities. On one side was a green ocean composed of dense primeval forests, and on the other side was the towering Kunlun mountain range. The Kunlun mountain range was completely covered with snow from the mountainside up. Even though Ryue knew that the purpose of this trip was the period of ancient giant beasts, when she saw the beautiful scenery here, she could not help but be amazed. More and more exclamations came. As the Zodiac guardian god warriors woke up one by one, the youths from the 4 major families also woke up. Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them. They took a deep breath of the clear air, and their expressions looked a little greedy. The impurities in their bodies seemed to be purified by the air here. For a moment they even forgot the purpose of this trip, and were completely intoxicated by this environment that they had never experienced before. While everyone was intoxicated by the ancient giant beasts, Chi-Yu's mind was on other things. He expanded his spiritual power, and first sensed the surrounding environment. In this place where natural energy was abundant, his spiritual power had spread out to an area of thousands of square kilometers. Although this location was not the place where he had left the ancient giant beasts, the Kunlun mirror's teleportation was just right. They were in a flat, hilly area that was about 100 meters high. In front of them was the Kunlun mountain range, and behind them was a large primeval forest. Within the range of Chi-Yu's spiritual power, although there were some ancient giant beasts, they were not very powerful. After all, the battlefield between the divine beasts and the ferocious beasts was not here. Therefore, this was obviously a very suitable place to set up camp. Faint energy undulations were emitted from Chi-Yu's body. This time, his spiritual power was mixed with the aura of natural energy, so everyone could clearly feel his presence. After checking everyone's body to make sure that there were no problems, Chi Xian coughed. His voice was very soft, but it rang in everyone's mind. It woke up these fellows who were still intoxicated, and everyone's gaze fell on Chi-Yu's body at the same time. We've arrived at our destination. Think about it. Most of you must be very surprised at what kind of place this is. This is not something you need to know. All you need to do is to listen to my orders. For the next few months, this will be our base. Now I'll give you an hour. Set up camp according to 12 teams. Form a circular camp. In the middle, there will be an empty space with a diameter of 50 meters. Yin Xiaoi said, Boss, what camp? Are we going to stay here? Chi-Yu nodded and said, That's right. For the next few months, all of you will be here. Whoever has tidied up their living quarters, come here to collect your luggage. If you can't finish in an hour, then you don't need your luggage. Without any tools, all you can rely on now is your own hands. There is a forest behind, you can use wood or stones. Everything depends on your own ability. This will also be the first group training since we arrived here. After hearing Chi-Yu's words, the youths from the 4 major families did not hesitate and immediately ran towards the direction of the forest. Chi Yu's orders were absolute to them now. Perhaps they did not know much about Chi Yu. However, the cosmic crimson golden armor had completely conquered the hearts of these youths, who didn't want to become stronger. When Chi Yu used the cosmic crimson golden armor, the enormous energy aura was absolutely incomparable to them. That huge amount of energy was enough to shock even their lives. With such a boss, how could they not seize the opportunity? These youths who were selected to join the Zodiac Guardian camp were all extremely smart. They all understood that only by obeying Chi Yu's orders could they better improve their strength. These youths had secretly decided that no matter how difficult this group training was, they must persevere. This was because Chi Yu had once said that as long as they could persevere and complete this group training, their strength would at least double. Chi Yu's words were absolutely not exaggerated in their hearts. Sensing that the youths from the 4 major families had immediately carried out his orders, Chi Yu could not help but reveal a faint smile on his face. These youths were indeed nurturing talent. Hopefully, they could become the main force to protect the East in the future. None of the Zodiac Guardian warriors moved. Everyone surrounded Chi Yu. Chi Yu slightly frowned and said, "What are you waiting for? Don't forget that each of you has 10 subordinates now. As the Zodiac Guardian warriors, you must lead by example. In this group training, they are secondary. You are the main focus. Before coming here, you are my friends, my brothers and sisters. But after coming here, at least before leaving, I will be your instructor. I have said that I will not be lenient. Start immediately. No one is an exception." An icy aura emitted from Chi Yu's body. The enormous pressure shocked the Zodiac Guardian warriors. They looked at each other. They knew that the group training had started from this moment. Ryue was the first to take the lead and fly towards her team of youths. The others also left Chi Yu's side one after another. Even Mo Dan would not resist Chi Yu's orders now. Although she is arrogant and impulsive, she is not a fool. After seeing Chi Yu's star sun crimson golden armor, she was not a fool. Why else would she do something so extreme? Chi Yu was indeed very fair. Fan Lian, Shang Bing, Jida, and Snow Girl, who had just had sex with him, were all sent out by him. For an ordinary person, it was absolutely impossible to find a place to live in such a spacious place within an hour and stay there for a few months. However, these people who came here with Chi Yu were not ordinary people. After an hour had passed, all kinds of houses had decorated this hilly area with a lively atmosphere. The first to complete the construction of her own house was a plant soul. She did not even leave Chi Yu's side. She walked directly to the center of the hilly area and scattered a few seeds on the ground. The natural energy began to fluctuate violently as she activated it. The vines broke out of the ground and began to grow rapidly. In just 10 minutes, these thick and wise vines had coiled into a small house that was only about 5 square meters in size. There was only a gap on the roof of the house because the vines were rooted in the ground. It looked extremely solid. It gave people a very good and comfortable feeling. The hut looked very elegant, and the green vines were full of vitality. That was a room with life. The one who had almost completed the plant soul was Snow Girl. The residence she had built was also extremely simple. At the same time, it also reflected her strength. She flew away for about 10 minutes, and in the direction of her flight. It was the Kunlun mountain range. 10 minutes later, Snow Girl returned to the hill with a huge piece of ice. Under the control of her energy, the ice was like soft dough. A small house formed from ice quickly appeared in the open space 10 meters away from the greenhouse of the plant soul. The ice blue hut was slightly larger than the plant soul's room. No matter how one looked at it, it could accommodate 2 people. Although the room was made of ice. However, because Snow Girl's energy was of the ice attribute, as long as she was still here and injected some of her energy into the ice house every day, she would not be afraid of the ice melting. The Zodiac Guardian warriors did not have such a special skill. Those who were weaker like Emodan and Guanjing could not even build houses as fast as some of the leaders of the four big families. Different abilities would produce different results when building a residence. The 30 disciples of the Shen family quickly finished building their own rooms. Their method of building houses was similar to the plant soul, but compared to the plant soul, it was more difficult for them to build houses. After all, the Shen family's ability was of the wood attribute. Therefore, using some vines and wood, a small house that could only accommodate one person was completed very quickly. Some of them even found some big leaves of plants to decorate the floor of their house so that they could rest. Using his spiritual power to feel everyone's movements, Chi Yu thought to himself that in this training, other than the Zodiac Guardian warriors, it was probably the best group to get the best results. It was the Shun family in the capital. The wood attribute allowed them to be like fish in water in the huge natural energy atmosphere of the ancient beast. When they cultivated, they would definitely get twice the results with half the effort. Ryue was the third to finish building a house. Although she did not have the Tesu ability of the Plant Soul and Snow Girl, she was the strongest after Chiyu. Under her dragon power, the stone was no different from tofu. Perhaps it was because she missed the scene of her and Chi-Yu's love pledge in the stone cave. She built a stone house for herself, and it was even bigger than the one Snow Girl had. Under her exquisite control, the stone was cut as smooth as a mirror. Although Ryue did not have much experience in building houses, when her house was finished, it looked really good. Even the doors and windows were built very well. At the end of the hour, no matter what, at least everyone had temporarily completed the construction of their own residences. Of course, whether they could live in it or not was another matter. For example, Mo Dandan and Guan Jing's 2 wooden houses looked like they could be blown over by the wind at any time. After everyone built their own houses, they came to the center of the empty space surrounded by the houses and gathered together. Other than the people of the Shen clan who looked relatively relaxed, the youths of the other 3 clans were all sweating profusely. After all, cutting down trees from thousands of meters away and bringing them to the hill to build houses in an hour was too short for them. A faint light shone from the Kirin bead on Chi-Yu's chest, and everyone's luggage appeared on the empty space. Chi-Yu said, "Take your luggage back. After an hour of rest, the training will officially begin. Everyone, gather with your respective team leaders and wait for my orders." Since they had just arrived, it was necessary to let them relax and pack their things first. Then, they could start the real training. After Chi-Yu finished giving instructions, he went directly to Ryue's room. The others also went back to their rooms. Within an hour, a small village had basically taken shape. "Chi-Yu, it's really beautiful here. Is this the ancient behemoth period?" Ryue held Chi-Yu's hand. Although the room was built, the stone house was still empty. Chi-Yu hugged Ryue and said, "This is the original ecology. Everything comes from nature and has not been destroyed by us humans. I also think that this place is very beautiful. The training is about to begin. Ryue, you are the strongest among the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Therefore, in the course of the training, your responsibilities will be very heavy. I want you to work with me to supervise and protect everyone. Your team will be led by Snow Girl for the time being." Ryue said, "I haven't asked you, but how do you plan to start the training after bringing everyone here? To be honest, the environment here is not bad, but I can't think of a way to train." Chi-Yu said, "Actually, even I haven't thought about it. However, to really improve your strength, it can't be achieved by just training. Only by constantly going through the baptism of actual combat can everyone become stronger. Not only can actual combat increase one's combat experience, but at the same time, under great pressure, it can also better stimulate everyone's potential." Chapter 219. Chi-Yu smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Beasts? Not only do they have to face beasts, but they also have to face the harsh environment and divine beasts. Right now, the difference in strength between us Zodiac Guardian warriors is still quite big. We have to get Mo Dan as soon as possible. Vol. Little e. Guanjing. That way we will be able to display our true strength. You take a rest first. I'll go out and take a look. I'll be back in a while. Another hour passed. The previous construction of the houses was not good enough, but in this hour, they had more or less been adjusted. The luggage of more than 100 people had also been packed into their own rooms. At the very least, from the looks of it, everyone felt that this was not a training session, but a vacation instead. They just didn't know where this vacation place was. However, they were also fascinated by the environment here. Everyone was punctual. When Chiyu once again appeared in the middle of the empty space in the temporary Zodiac warrior village, everyone was already waiting there. Chiyu said in a clear voice, "All right, from now on, the training begins. Ryue's team will temporarily follow the plant soul and Jida. I'll give you 10 minutes to prepare. After 10 minutes, each team leader will lead your team members and begin to climb the Kunlun mountain range. The Kunlun mountain range covers an extremely wide area. Your mission today is to climb over the first mountain. I won't restrict what you want to bring with you. However, every pair must separate when climbing the mountain. 2 teams are not allowed to climb together. Understood?" Understood. Everyone knew that the training was about to begin. At least from below, the Kunlun mountain range didn't seem too high. However, they didn't know that the Kunlun mountain range was shrouded in icy fog all year round. Even the outermost mountain was more than 4 kilometers above sea level. The geographical location of the Shengshao village was only about a kilometer above sea level, so it wasn't affected by the plateau's climate. Chiyu originally wanted Snow Girl to lead Ryue's team, but, after a brief thought, he decided to let the plant soul and Jida lead the team, while Shangbing would join the weakest team, Guanjing, and lead the team together with Guanjing. 10 minutes later, Team 12. More than 130 people set off quickly. The moment they set off, every young man was filled with confidence. They would only feel that this kind of training wasn't tough enough. Climbing a mountain was not difficult for people like them who had special abilities. Chiyu brought Snow Girl and Ryue to stand in the middle of Shengshao village. Looking at the 12 black lines heading towards the mountain closest to them in the Kunlun mountain range, he couldn't help but reveal a strange smile. That smile seemed to carry a hint of cruelty. Ryue said, "What are they going to do after they climb to the top of the mountain? Aren't we following them?" Chiyu smiled and said, "There's no need. Let's start cultivating. I think, at least for 3 days, they won't be able to come back. A 3,000-meter mountain might not be much, but this is the era of the ancient beasts. There are no roads for them to walk on. Moreover, will the process of climbing the mountain really be that peaceful? I said that what they have to go through is not only the tiredness of climbing the mountain, but also the test of the environment and special changes. I'm afraid it won't be easy to climb to the top." As he said that, Chiyu had already sat down cross-legged. Although Ryue didn't quite understand what he meant, she still sat down with him. Cultivating beside Chiyu was definitely the best thing for her. Kiran's aura could fully stimulate the thundercloud force in her body, so the effect of cultivating was much better than cultivating alone. Snow Girl sat on the other side of Chiyu. Chiyu activated his natural energy and finally returned to the era of the ancient beast. He also began to cultivate his source of nature. In this environment, it wouldn't take long for his source of nature to return to its original peak state. They were both cultivating the source of nature. In the modern era, Chiyu could only feel the natural energy in the air condensing towards him. But in the era of the ancient beasts, the clear green spots of light appeared again. The green spots of light condensed towards Chi-Yu's body from all directions without any pattern. Each spot of light condensed a huge amount of natural energy. Snow Girl and Ryue, who were beside Chi-Yu, naturally benefited greatly. Natural energy was an extremely gentle type of energy. It was difficult for anyone to deal with. Although they couldn't completely transform natural energy like Chi-Yu, such an abundant energy atmosphere was still very beneficial to their cultivation. The natural energy in his body that had weakened due to exhaustion began to be most effectively replenished in this primitive world. Chi-Yu was looking forward to his energy returning to its peak state as soon as possible and breaking through to the seventh cloud realm. When he arrived at the era of the ancient beasts, when Ting had fallen into a deep sleep again. Needless to say, he couldn't awaken when Ting's soul because he didn't have enough energy. Therefore, Chi-Yu was extremely thirsty for power now. He also deeply felt that if he wanted to resurrect Wen Ting, he would probably have to rely on the natural energy, because that was the source of life energy. His life was successfully resurrected by relying on the huge natural energy of the Emperor's Heart Snow Lotus King. Since that was the case, Wen Ting also needed such energy. Therefore, although he had already experienced the benefits of cultivating the 4 types of thundercloud force in his previous cultivation after coming to this world, he decided to improve the energy of his source of nature first. This way, firstly, it would make it easier for his body to accept energy. Secondly, the increase in energy of the source of nature would also allow him to play a better supporting role in the cultivation of others. Even the goddess Athena needed the energy, so how could ordinary cultivators not need it? However, from the time Chi-Yu started to wake up, it didn't take too long. Half an hour later, she retracted her energy and opened her eyes. Snow Girl and Ryue were still cultivating. Snow Girl was more affected by the natural energy, while Ryue benefited greatly from the dual influence of the natural energy and Kirin's aura. Although he couldn't see, Chi-Yu's eyes were still looking in the direction of the Kunlun Mountains, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The training had just begun. The energy in her body began to fluctuate rapidly under her control, and a faint green-gray light surrounded her body. A pair of black wings spread out from his back, and Chi-Yu's feet touched the ground and rose into the air. In the blink of an eye, he was already in the air, about 100 meters above the ground. Chi-Yu's departure also awakened Snow Girl and Ryue at the same time. After the 2 women converged their energy aura, they looked up at Chi-Yu in the air. They saw Chi-Yu floating in the air, and his body had been completely enveloped by the green-gray light. The energy fluctuations in the air became more and more intense, but this time it was not the fluctuation of the natural energy, but the source of the energy was the wind. With a smile, Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a faint cold light, and the energy of the wind began to condense under his control. When the natural energy condensed, it was a green light spot, and when the wind energy condensed, it was an invisible wind blade. When these wind blades were cleverly combined under the control of Chi-Yu's mental power, the invisible energy gradually became tangible. The formless energy gradually became tangible, and this tangible energy was cyan. When the energy condensed again, the cyan color increased to cyan gray, and the energy fluctuations became more and more intense. The black wings on his back retracted, and a green light lit up on Chi-Yu's forehead. Then, the huge shadow of Kirin on his body rose into the air. Kirin's energy seemed to seep out from his skin, and the huge energy fluctuations completely enveloped Chi-Yu's body. This time, the shadow of Kirin that appeared was green, and the green color symbolized the wind Kirin in Kirin. The wind rose, and the air around Chi-Yu's body began to stir violently under the influence of the green-gray light. Every time it moved, the wind would become stronger. Soon, the huge wind began to condense, and the light of each wind gradually became stronger. The green-gray light gradually gathered into a huge whirlpool, completely enveloping Chi-Yu's body. Wind Kirin let out a low roar and completely integrated into the whirlpool. Chi-Yu's position was right in the center of the whirlpool. The faint light emitted from his body increased the energy of the wind to the limit. With a flash of light, Chi-Yu had already separated from the center of the whirlpool, and a green-gray tornado had already formed in the air. The blue sky became clearer, and under the agitation of the wind, not even a trace of cloud could stay nearby. The energy aura emitted from Chi Yu's body became stronger. Although his body had already separated from the tornado, the entire tornado was completely under his mental power's control. He pointed with his right hand, and the wind moved. The tornado rose into the sky with the whistling energy, and Chi Yu slowly floated down to the ground. He sat down cross-legged between Ryue and Snow Girl again. At this moment, his body had completely turned green. The violent fluctuation of the wind energy caused Snow Girl and Ryue to look at him in surprise. They didn't understand what he was doing. The huge green-gray tornado in the sky also began to spin more and more violently. Under the control of Chi Yu's powerful mental power, the tornado began to quickly rise into the sky. As it rose, more wind energy in the air condensed towards it, causing the tornado to become bigger and bigger. Chi Yu sat there cross-legged. The thundercloud force in his body gradually converged, and his mental power was completely released to control the tornado in the sky. Under his command, the tornado slowly moved in the direction of the Kunlun mountain range. This was not the skill that Kirin's thundercloud force had when he reached level 3. Instead, it was the hurricane tornado that Chi Yu formed with the power of heaven and earth after he reached level 6. Although Ryue and Snow Girl, who were below, didn't really feel the horror of the tornado, in the center of the tornado, the wind had actually reached a terrifying level. The enormous energy aura moved rhythmically. Every time it moved, the air in the air would become more turbulent, and the size of the tornado continued to expand. Ryue asked in a low voice, "Chi Yu, what are you doing?" Chi Yu closed his eyes and said, "I'm creating some trouble for them. Unpredictable factors can appear at any time. The first obstacle they have to overcome today's training is the influence of the environment. If I'm not wrong, all 12 teams should have reached about 1/3 of the mountain now. At this time, even if they want to go down the mountain, it's too late. Under the effect of the tornado, it's not something that one person can resist alone. What they need now is teamwork. At the same time, under the pressure of the tornado, it's time for them to perform." After hearing Chi Yu's words, Ryue and Snow Girl understood. Ryue said worriedly, "But can they really withstand such a huge tornado? Will there be any danger?" Chi Yu shook his head and said, "Don't worry, my mental power is always following the 12 teams. Once there's danger, I'll stop the tornado. Do you want to see how they deal with the tornado? Come, sit beside me and give me your hands." Ryue and Snow Girl sat beside Chi Yu at the same time and put their hands in front of Chi Yu. Chi Yu grabbed their little hands and operated his mental power. While controlling the tornado, he fused his mental power with the two girls' mental power, presenting everything he saw with the mind's eye to the two girls' minds. The 12 teams had set out for half an hour. Just as Chi Yu had predicted, they were now close to 1/3 of the height of the first peak of the Kunlun mountain range. Of course, from their point of view, it seemed that they were about to reach the peak, because at this time, they had already entered the area covered by ice and snow. Clouds floated above, and it seemed that only a small peak was covered. Due to the increase in altitude, the surrounding temperature began to drop a lot. Before coming here, it was still early autumn in the capital, so most of the clothes they wore were relatively thin. When they first came to this world, they didn't notice any problems. But now that they had reached the mountain covered by ice and snow, the cold air made them have no choice but to use their own energy to resist. The previous 1,000 meters of climbing did not consume too much of their physical strength. After all, although there was no road on the mountain, there were all kinds of plants growing on the mountain, which could be used for climbing. Plus, the mountain was relatively flat. Therefore, the climbing was considered smooth. But now, as soon as they entered the area covered by ice and snow, they immediately felt different. There was no place to borrow strength, and the area covered by ice and snow became difficult to walk. Although it was not as slippery as ice, The obstruction of the snow and the steep mountain made their climbing speed greatly reduced. Wind suddenly appeared without warning. In the beginning, the wind was still very gentle, and the clouds at the top of the mountain began to slowly fluctuate under the effect of the wind. But soon, all the 12 teams realized that something was wrong, because the clouds at the top of the mountain had been blown away by the wind. The first thing they were shocked to see was that this mountain was actually so tall. They still had a long way to go to the top of the mountain. Then, they saw the huge greenish-gray tornado at the top of the mountain. The blue sky was covered by the huge tornado, and the power of the wind became more and more obvious in front of them. The team led by Su Dong climbed the fastest. When he was choosing, he tried his best to choose the stronger members of the 4 major families, so he was very sensitive to energy. Suddenly, he saw the change at the top of the mountain. He immediately reacted and shouted, "Everyone, be careful. Quick! Everyone gather together and come to my side. Everyone, hold hands. Damn, what kind of weather is this? It was fine just now, why did a tornado suddenly appear?" As he spoke, he waved his palms without hesitation. The powerful attack of the Zodiac Tiger Warrior was undoubtedly displayed with his swollen hand. With a loud bang, the mountain wall in front of him was covered in ice and snow. In an instant, a 1-meter deep, 3-meter wide pit was formed. Feeling the strong fluctuation of the wind in the air, Su Dong did not dare to be careless. Both of his palms struck out in a cycle, each strike bringing with it a loud bang. After a dozen strikes, even with his strength, he had to stop for a moment. Without hesitation, he called out to his teammate, "Quick, everyone, come in." After all, the Zodiac Tiger Warrior's strength was very shocking. After more than a dozen consecutive strikes, a 1.5-meter deep pit with a radius of about 10 square meters immediately appeared on the mountain wall. However, the ice on Kunlun Mountain was even harder than the rocks of a country. So, at this time, Su Dong's palms were already aching from the impact. Most of the Zodiac Guardian God warriors had rich combat experience, so when they noticed the danger, they immediately responded accordingly. Just like Su Dong, the stronger Zodiac warriors quickly searched for a strong terrain. Although they were confident that they would not be injured under the attack of the tornado, they could not guarantee that their teammates would be able to do the same. So, what they needed to do now was to try their best to prevent their teammates from being attacked by the weather. Ming Ming's method was very simple. Her iron wing technique was very effective. Although her strength had not fully recovered, she could still use the iron wing technique to dig a pit in the mountain wall. At this time, the ones who were suffering the most were the weaker Zodiac warriors. Vol, Yen Xiaoi, Mo Dan, and Guan Jing were not strong enough to dig a pit in a short period of time. So, they could only pray for their own luck and gather with their teammates, hoping that they could use their combined strength to fight against the tornado in the sky. The light of the greenish-gray tornado disappeared and turned completely gray. The area it covered instantly expanded by several times, completely covering the entire mountain. The huge wind swept the entire mountain in an instant. For a moment, the layer of snow on the surface of the mountain was swept up by the tornado, forming a huge snow fog. With the surging wind, the fog revolved around the entire mountain. Although the tornado's attack power had decreased due to the expansion of its attack range, the cutting power contained in the wind was still there. The snowflakes mixed in the tornado were like small knives, sweeping every corner of the mountain. That indiscriminate attack caused the iceberg to reveal its true appearance. Not only did the tyrannical wind force sweep up the layer of snow on the surface, but at the same time, the knife-like cutting force also left marks of varying depths on the mountain peak. With the protection of the pit, the teammates of Su Dong, Ming Ming, and Guan Ping were also greatly affected, but under the protection of their energy, they were much better off. Although the young people of the 4 major families were still very poor in actual combat experience, in the face of such a huge crisis, they did not dare to hold back. They released their energy out of their bodies, forcibly protecting their bodies from being hurt by the external wind. At this time, the behavior of the young people of the four major families was different. The young people of the Shin family, who were unusually proud when they were building the houses, were now at a disadvantage. Their wood attribute natural energy was the most vulnerable in the hurricane, but the young people of the Zhou family were much better off. Most of their metal attribute abilities could protect their bodies, minimizing the damage caused by the hurricane. Sometimes, when the wind blades in the hurricane attacked their bodies, they would even make a metallic sound. The hurricane did not show any signs of stopping. Instead, it became more and more intense. Although the relationship between the four major families was not very harmonious, in the face of the power of nature, the members of each team unconsciously cooperated with each other. The youths of the Zhou family selflessly used their bodies to shield their relatively weaker teammates, while the captains of each team also tried their best to push their energy to the maximum to protect their teammates. For a moment, everyone did their best to seek survival in this huge hurricane. Chi Yu's mental energy was tightly linked with the hurricane from beginning to end. He paid attention to all 12 teams, and as he watched the youths begin to cooperate and help each other resist the hurricane, the corner of his mouth involuntarily revealed a faint smile. This hurricane was not only a test for them, but also a medium for the Zodiac Guardian warriors to build a deep relationship with their teammates. These young people were not stupid. In the face of such a huge crisis, they all understood that only by cooperating with each other and combining their respective strengths could they resist the attack of the hurricane together. The principle of working together would benefit both sides gradually emerged in their hearts. Snow Girl and Ryua also saw all this through Chi Yu's spiritual power. They were deeply shocked by the hurricane that Chi Yu used. That was the power of a single person. It actually caused a crisis of hundreds of people. This kind of strength could only be described as terrifying. In fact, they did not know that although Chi Yu was very strong, it was impossible for him to display such a powerful attack. The reason why the hurricane could have such an effect was because of two reasons. Firstly, it was because Chi Yu's earth-wind thundercloud force had indeed reached a certain level. Secondly, it was because he made full use of the time. Using his earth-wind thundercloud force as a medium to absorb a large amount of wind elemental energy molecules from the air, he was able to produce such a huge effect. If it was a real battle, how could the enemy give him such a chance? Such a huge wind. Chi Yu could only barely control its direction. As for a truly subtle attack, it was impossible. It was impossible for him to truly attack. Chi Yu, it's about time. Guan Jing and Mo Dan are almost at their limit. Ryua said anxiously. A captain with outstanding strength was indeed the best guardian for his teammate. After all, the strength of Mo Dan and Guan Jing was much weaker than that of the other Zodiac Guardian warriors. Their strength was not much stronger than that of the youths of the four families. At this time, it was very difficult for them to even look after themselves, let alone protect their teammates. Fortunately, there were more youths of the Luo family in their two teams, so they could barely support themselves. Chi Yu smiled and said, "No, the pressure now is not enough. Just watch." As he said that, he began to use his spiritual power to adjust the hurricane. Not being able to control the hurricane didn't mean that there was no way. Chi Yu began to change the direction of the hurricane, from the original frontal attack to the other side. The entire hurricane began to tilt, and the center of attack moved towards Su Dong and the other powerful Zodiac Guardian warriors. On the other side, the pressure on Mo Dan and Guan Jing was relatively less, and they had some time to breathe. With Chi Yu's control, the entire hurricane began to sway constantly. Every Zodiac Guardian warrior could clearly feel that the attack of the hurricane was becoming stronger and weaker. When it was strong, they were almost unable to protect their teammates. However, when their energy was about to be broken, the center of attack of the hurricane shifted. Chi Yu constantly adjusted the hurricanes according to the combined strength of each Zodiac Guardian God warrior and their teammate. He did his best to make the attacks of each team infinitely close to their limit. This way, these people who were in the midst of training were constantly fighting against their own limits, and the energy within their bodies was squeezed out as quickly as possible. The faces of the Zodiac Guardian warriors had become very ugly. The hurricane didn't have the slightest intention of stopping. They knew that if it went on like this, even if they could protect themselves, their subordinates would probably be finished. At this critical moment, the first one to stand up was Su Dong. Seeing that he couldn't resist the power of the hurricane with just defense, he began to launch a counterattack. After giving a simple order to his teammates, Su Dong suddenly used his own attribute mutation. After the mutation, his whole body was covered with black and white hair, and tiger wings stretched out from his back. In an instant, his strength was raised to the limit. At this time, Su Dong didn't dare to be careless. After completing the first stage of the mutation, he immediately raised his strength to the second stage. The tiger wings immediately grew again, and the hair on his body began to droop behind him. In an instant, Su Dong's strength increased several-fold. With a deafening roar, he made his move. He flapped his tiger wings in the direction of the hurricane and soared into the air. With both hands in front of his chest, a huge fiery energy rose from his back. Under the attack of the biting cold hurricane, Su Dong barely controlled his body to float in the air. The fiery energy behind him grew bigger and bigger with the support of milky white light spots that were constantly emitting from his body. At this time, Su Dong's teammates had completely escaped from the hurricane under the protection of his energy. They were all gasping for breath, looking at the heroic posture of Su Dong floating in the air. Su Dong's attack finally began, and the great Sun Destroyer was displayed once again. These days, he hadn't been slacking at all. Compared to the time when he fought with Chi Yu, his thundercloud force had improved to a certain extent. A huge red light broke through the air, condensed into a huge energy wave, and directly shot towards the center of the hurricane vortex. Under the guidance of the Qi, under the guidance of Su Dong's aura, Chi Yu, who was controlling the hurricane from afar, couldn't help but tremble. However, the smile on his face grew a little wider. Good, it seems that Su Dong's strength has improved a lot. The hurricane was created by him, but at this time, there was a certain distance between him and himself, so it wasn't easy to control it. Su Dong's attack was equivalent to an indirect attack on Chi Yu. He controlled the intensity of the hurricane, using the huge wind energy in the hurricane to constantly weaken Su Dong's attack. As soon as Su Dong made his move, the other Zodiac Guardian warriors also gradually understood. Guan Ping and Modi almost made their moves at the same time. Guan Ping had also reached the Six Clouds realm. Six Clouds was a huge bottleneck for the Zodiac Guardian warriors to improve their strength. Although the gap between the Six Clouds and the Seven Clouds was still very big, to be able to complete the second stage of attribute mutation undoubtedly made a qualitative leap in the strength of the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Both were of the fire attribute, but Guan Ping's attack was the complete opposite of his gentle appearance. The overbearing lion mastiff's power was raised to the limit by him, and a red light with a bit of golden light also broke through the air, supporting Su Dong's attack towards the hurricane. Chapter 220. With the three of them taking the lead, the rest of the Zodiac Guardian warriors also took action. However, each of the Zodiac Guardian warriors was good at different abilities. Some focused on energy, some focused on flexibility, and some focused on special abilities. For example, Hu Guang's energy was not weaker than theirs, but he was stronger in poison. Most of his energy was converted into poison. Therefore, although he wanted to help, he could not use much of his strength. Ian's situation was similar to his. When Ian attacked, his energy was extremely condensed. Coupled with his flexible skills, it was easy for him to deal a fatal blow to his opponent. However, he was not good at attacking energy out of his body. Therefore, the two of them could only try their best to protect their teammates, but it was even more difficult for them to help. Changjia the Hummer was not bad. He was an innate awakened. After following the Zodiac Guardian warriors for a period of time, he could control his energy well. Although he could not attack continuously like Modi, he could make the hurricane shake every time he attacked. The four of them became the main opponents of the hurricane. The combined attacks of the four of them greatly affected the hurricane. It could not attack indiscriminately like before. The hurricane lasted for nearly an hour before it slowly dissipated. Everyone collapsed on the mountain wall, gasping for breath. They all deeply felt the horror of the force of nature. Only a few of them were still neat. Most of their clothes had become stripped. In order to save their lives, they had tried their best to exert their energy to the limit. At this time, most of them had exhausted their energy. The cold kept attacking their bodies. At this time, they realized that it was not as easy as they had imagined to climb up the mountain. Only a few powerful Zodiac Guardian warriors still had energy left. However, they could not rest quietly for a while. They kept calling their teammates to prevent them from falling asleep. This was the snow mountain. Once they fell asleep, they might never wake up again. The Zodiac Guardian God warriors had basically figured out each other's locations during the previous hurricane. Although Su Dong had consumed a lot of energy, he was still the strongest among them and had the ability to fly. He flapped his wings and shuttled back and forth across the mountain wall. After contacting each of the captains, after a short discussion, they all decided to retreat down the mountain first. They would consider other things after they reorganized themselves. For the safety of their subordinates, it was impossible to continue climbing the mountain. After completing the control of the hurricane, Chi Yu once again entered the state of cultivation. There was not much expression on his face. It was as if everything that had happened just now had nothing to do with him. Ryue and Snow Girl did not know whether to laugh or cry. Through Chi Yu's spiritual power, they could see the sorry state of their companions on the mountain. They could not help but feel glad that it was not them who climbed the mountain. At the same time, Chi Yu's group training was also a question. If they were so strong on the first day, what would the group training be like? Under Su Dong's suggestion, in order to ensure everyone's safety, the 12 squads of more than 100 people gathered together halfway up the mountain. Then, they prepared to descend below the snow line and rest for a while before descending the mountain. At this time, the altitude of 1,000 meters was not as easy to deal with as when they first climbed the mountain. Looking at the exhausted youths of the four families, the Zodiac Guardian warriors could not help but smile bitterly. The hurricane had made them a little afraid of the novelty of this world. After all, in their hearts, how could they resist the power of nature? They were just lucky this time. If the hurricane was stronger next time, they might not be able to protect them so well. Although they were all very familiar with Chi Yu, not a single one of them could have imagined that the natural disaster had actually been caused by their boss. After going below the snow line with great difficulty, Su Dong temporarily became the commander-in-chief and ordered everyone to gather together. The Su family used their own fire energy to ignite some relatively dry plants to keep everyone warm. They also took out some dry food to eat. They planned to go down the mountain and return to the village after their physical strength recovered a little. Vol, are you okay? Su Dong glanced at Vol, who was panting at the side. Vol could no longer speak at this time. He could only sit there and wave at Su Dong. Although his strength was above the 3-cloud level, his energy was extremely special among the Zodiac Guardian warriors. He was really not good at fighting hurricanes, and his overall ability was not strong. In order to protect his teammates, he was hit by several strong hurricanes. At this time, the clothes on his back were completely damaged, and there were purple marks. If it wasn't for Chi Yu transforming his body with the energy of the source of nature, perhaps Vol would have already been bleeding. At this time, his teammates surrounded him and looked at him with concern. After all, Vol had risked being swept away by hurricanes several times to save them. Towards this chubby and young captain, the hearts of these team members were already filled with gratitude as a favorite treasure. Of course, Vol wasn't the most wretched of the Zodiac guardian god warriors. The most wretched ones were Guan Jing and Mo Dandan. Guan Jing was the last to join the Zodiac guardian warriors. He was not an innate awakened, and until now, he had just barely entered the one cloud level. He was a very selfish person, but as someone who had been in the industry before, he had finally selected 10 handsome youths from the 4 major families to join his team. How could he bear to let them get hurt? He used all his thundercloud force to use the only skill he could use, Roaring Pig World. His body swelled up like a huge meat mound, and like Vol, he blocked many attacks from the hurricanes. His strength was not as good as Vol, so now his body was covered in blood. Other than a few pieces of cloth, most of his body was exposed. This was with the help of Shang Bing, otherwise, he would have been torn apart by the hurricanes. At this time, the treatment he received was similar to that of Vol. His subordinates, who had survived the disaster, were busy treating his injuries. Mo Dan's situation was not much better than Guan Jing's. Although her clothes were saved, however, her meatball-like face had already swelled up. Who asked the Ox Zodiac warriors to only be able to use their heads for most of their skills, although his subordinates did not receive much care. But the crazy state of Mo Dan when resisting the hurricanes still made these youths admire her. Yan Xiaoi could be said to be the weakest among the Zodiac Guardian warriors, but he was in good condition. The Goat warrior's important abilities were healing and defense. Therefore, although he only had the strength of Sanyun, he did a very good job in protecting his teammate. The gentle goat thundercloud force was able to skillfully deflect the hurricanes. Although his teammates were also injured, the healing ability of the goat thundercloud force was undoubtedly displayed. However, Yang Yunli's healing abilities were undeniable. Other than the few strongest Zodiac warriors, the members of this team were the most complete. At this time, this lecherous guy was looking for the injured female members of the other teams, rushing to heal them. Su Dong looked at the large number of injured soldiers with a bitter smile. The light in his eyes dimmed a little. It seemed that everyone's strength was still far from enough. Their reactions were also a little slow. If he could have acted earlier, perhaps the situation would have been better. However, the energy of the hurricanes was indeed very strange. Although they looked huge, their energy did not cause a destructive blow. This was a blessing in disguise. Just as the group of over 100 people started to rest, preparing to leave the terrifying mountain peak after recovering a little, 2 huge figures, one black and one white, had quietly appeared at the peak of the mountain above them. The white figure said to the black figure worriedly, "Hubby, will there be any problems if we do this?" The black figure laughed and said, "Even if there is a problem, it's not our problem. Anyway, he was the one who told us to do it. Come on, let's begin. I know why I feel so comfortable watching others being tortured." The white figure said unhappily, "Is that so? Good. Looks like you want to torture me too?" No, don't pinch me. I just accidentally said the truth. I was just saying it casually. Let's begin." As he spoke, the huge black figure raised his upper body. However, he spat out a white stream of air into the air. Under the influence of the white stream of air, another mountain not far away began to gradually fluctuate, and a series of loud rumbling sounds gradually rang out. After the previous hurricane attack, at this time, the Zodiac warriors were already frightened bird. The sudden series of loud noises and the sudden tremors under their feet made them subconsciously look up into the sky. Fortunately, after the hurricane left, the sky had already returned to blue, and there seemed to be nothing wrong with it. However, where did this thunder-like roar come from? Of course, they couldn't see that at this time, on the mountain behind the one they were climbing, a huge layer of snow had already rushed down from the strong tremors. At this time, it had already rushed to the other side of the mountain they were on, and with the help of the strong momentum, it was in the process of climbing over the mountain. Guan Ping and Su Dong looked at each other, and Su Dong asked, "What's going on?" Guan Ping thought for a moment and said, "It sounds like an avalanche, but the snow on the surface of our mountain has been swept away by the previous hurricane. There's only ice left. How can it be an avalanche? But this sound." Suddenly, a sharp voice sounded. It was Yan Xiaoyi. "Oh my God! Who said it's all ice? Look!" Everyone turned their eyes to the top of the mountain. What they saw was a white mist whistling down, and a huge amount of snow was whistling down from the top of the mountain, which was more than 3,000 meters high. It seemed that the avalanche was coming in their direction. Everyone stood up from the ground, as if they had been injected with steroid. However, they were, after all, the elites of the four big families. For a moment, none of them chose to immediately run away, because they were all true snappers, and even if they ran away now, it would be of no use. No matter how fast they were, it was impossible for them to be faster than an avalanche falling from the sky. What's more, at this time, they did not even have 10% of their strength left. Avalanches were absolutely terrifying, especially the stones and crushed ice mixed in the snow, which were enough to be fatal. At the critical moment, Guan Ping, who was the most educated, made the right choice. He shouted loudly, "Quick, everyone, grab the thicker plants around you and hide your body behind the plants. No matter what, don't let go. Quick!" At this moment, this was all they could do. When the huge snowfall fell from the sky, it only took an instant to erase more than 100 people from the first peak of the Kunlun mountain range. The terrifying avalanche swallowed their bodies and extended the snow line all the way to the foot of the mountain. Avalanches had always been a natural disaster in an instant. They came and went quickly. In just a few minutes, the surging snow had disappeared. "No, I can't hold on any longer," Su Dong shouted in a somewhat mournful voice. For a moment there was a loud thud, and more than 10 figures fell from the sky almost at the same time, falling into the soft snow layer. It turned out that when the avalanche came, at the critical moment, Su Dong, who was the only one who could fly, could only save his closest companions. All the Zodiac guardian warriors held hands together, and he tried his best to fly them up. It was not an easy task to carry more than 10 people with one pair of wings. Moreover, after using the great sun destruction magic and resisting the hurricane, Su Dong did not have much energy left. In addition to the other 10 Zodiac guardian warriors, he also carried Shang Bing and the plant soul. He was carrying 12 people. However, although he did not hold on for long, at least he had saved them from being baptized by the avalanche. They struggled to get up from the thick snow, and could not help but look at each other. Hu Guang cursed, "Damn it, don't tell me we're all dead on the first day. This weather is too strange, there's a hurricane and an avalanche. I don't know if it's because we're too unlucky." Yan Xiaoyi did not forget to bicker with Hu Guang. "It's not because we're unlucky, it's because you're unlucky, and you've dragged everyone down with you." Just as Hu Guang was about to lose his temper, Guan Ping said, "All right, let's not talk about this, let's hurry up and save the others, as many as we can. I don't know if Qi Yu has found out about the situation here. If he's here, we might be able to save more people." He just hoped that everyone could hear his voice before the avalanche came, so that at least they would not be swept away by the snow. Otherwise, even if they had the ability to move heaven and earth, they would not know where to find their teammate. Right at this moment, 2 figures flew up from the foot of the mountain. Everyone looked over and saw that it was the Snow Lady and Ruyu. Before they could greet the crowd, the 2 girls immediately started moving. The Snow Lady floated in midair, her right hand constantly pointing at the layer of snow below. Ruyu was beside her, and her dragon cloud force was activated. Wherever the Snow Lady pointed, Ruyu waved her hand and grabbed. Every time the Snow Lady pointed, there would be a cloud of snow mist and a figure. It turned out that when the avalanche came, Qi Yu had told them that today's training was about to begin. Snow Girl would be in charge of searching for people in the snow, while Ryua would be in charge of rescuing people and treating them. That was why the two girls could arrive so quickly. The other Zodiac Guardian warriors saw that the two girls had begun to rescue people, and hurriedly gathered the people that Ryue had rescued. These youths from the four big families had probably never suffered like this before. After all, they had not been buried for a long time. Most of them were still conscious, but now they could not move at all. Frightened and affected by the outside world, it was already good that they did not collapse. Their bodies were trembling, and they no longer had the strength to resist the cold. Snow Girl and Ryue moved very quickly. In just a short while, they had rescued a total of 120 people from the layer of snow. These youths were of good quality, and they had also received some survival training. Therefore, when Guan Ping shouted, all of them found nearby plants and held on tightly. Only a few unlucky ones were uprooted by the avalanche and rolled away. When they were rescued, they had more wounds on their bodies. Snow Girl and Ryue started the healing process at the same time. Their energy was still very abundant. The two's methods of saving people were completely different. Snow Girl used her own energy to absorb the cold air from the youths' bodies, while Ryue used her thundercloud force to help them expel the cold air from their bodies. Fortunately, the two women's energy was very strong. Although they were busy for a while, they were still able to take care of everyone. Although these people had already lost their ability to move, at least they were able to save their lives. When Ryue finished healing the last person, she couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief and said, "All right, it's done." She was the strongest among the Zodiac Guardian apart from Chiyu. Although she had healed a lot of people, the thundercloud force she consumed was still limited. Ryue turned to the other Zodiac Guardian warriors and said, "Chiyu said that each of you carry your teammates down the mountain. Today's training is temporarily over." The Zodiac Guardian God warriors couldn't help but look at each other. After being baptized by the avalanche, it could be said that this mountain could be said to be difficult to move an inch. The thick snow had greatly reduced their speed. Not to mention carrying people, after consuming a large amount of their own cloud energy, even walking on their own would be a problem. Su Dong, Guan Ping, and the others were slightly better off. When Mo Dan and Guan Jing heard Ryue's words, their expressions changed. Mo Dan was the first to react. She calmly moved in front of Ryue and put on a pitiful look and said, "Sister Ryue, you see, I really don't have any strength left. You definitely can't bear to let me carry people. Can you help me? I know that with your strength, you can easily carry my team down." Guan Jing said indignantly, "Mo Dan, don't be so shameless. You may be pitiful, but can you be more pitiful than me? You have to know that I am the last one to join the Zodiac Guardian warriors, and also the weakest one. Even if Sister Ryue wants to help, she will definitely help me. Isn't that right, Sister Ryue?" Ryue was stunned for a moment. She looked at Guan Jing and Mo Dan, as well as Vol and Yen Xiaoi, who were looking at her with longing eyes. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to go against Chi Yu's words, but she also didn't want to see her companions in so much pain. Indeed, with the abilities of the four weakest Zodiac Guardian warriors, it was already difficult for them to walk down the mountain by themselves, let alone carry others down the mountain. However, Ryue's hesitation didn't last for too long, because someone had already made the decision for her. A huge pressure came from the top of the mountain without warning. The Zodiac Guardian warriors couldn't help but raise their heads at the same time. Ian cursed, "F***ck, are you done yet? Hey, what's that?" They looked up and saw the same scene. They saw two figures, one black and one white, that didn't look very big, quickly descending from the sky, and the direction they were heading was exactly where they were. Ryue and Snow Girl's eyesight was the best among them. They clearly saw two dragon-shaped creatures flying down from the top of the mountain. And the huge pressure came from them. Although Ryue didn't know these two dragon-shaped creatures, Snow Girl did. They were the deep-sea nether snake that Chi-Yu and Kirin Shintaka subdued. The current deep-sea abyssal dragon and his wife, White Dragon. One black and one white, The two giant dragons' bodies were more than 20 meters long, especially the deep-sea abyssal dragon, who seemed to be full of invisible aura as he moved in the snow. A pair of purple eyes revealed an ominous glint, completely releasing the aura of a fierce beast. It was obvious that he didn't have good intentions. Before going up the mountain, Snow Girl had already received Chi Yu's instructions. Seeing the two dragons coming, she immediately cried out, "Everyone be careful, it's a fierce beast. I'm afraid they're going to attack us. Sister Ryue, let's hurry up and block them." The others quickly led their team members to retreat. "I'm afraid it'll be too late if we're late." Seeing the two dragons coming down from the mountain, Ryue's expression became serious. She flew up and faced them alone. Snow Girl didn't dare to expose Chi Yu's plan, so she quickly followed behind Ryue. She hurriedly followed Ryue. Anyway, she knew the two dragons, so they could not really hurt Ryue and the others. The Zodiac Guardian God warriors looked at each other, and Su Dong said resolutely, "I'll stay. You guys hurry down the mountain and find Boss. Only he can defeat such a powerful fierce beast." Guan Ping said hurriedly, "No, I'll stay. You guys used up too much energy just now." Su Dong said angrily, "All right, stop arguing. You guys quickly find Boss. That's the best help for me. Don't forget, I can fly. If I really can't do it, I can still escape." Ryue definitely won't be able to resist such a powerful fierce beast alone. As he said that, he quickly flew up and chased after Ryue and Snow Girl. Guan Ping took a deep breath. Su Dong had left, so he had to temporarily take charge. "Everyone hurry up, saving people is more important." At this time, Ming Ming said, "I have a way to save people down the mountain in the shortest time possible. However, I need your help. Which one of you has more energy?" Ian and Hu Guang said at the same time, "We're fine. We haven't resisted the hurricane yet, so we still have about 70% of our strength." Ming Ming nodded and said, "Good. Now transfer your energy to me. Don't stop. I'll be responsible for sending everyone down as fast as possible. However, I don't know how long I can last. How many people can the others bring down? Just start as fast as you can." Hu Guang and Ian looked at Ming Ming in surprise. However, they didn't hesitate and hurried to Ming Ming's side. Under Ming Ming's instructions, they each stood behind Ming Ming and pressed on Ming Ming's shoulders. Ming Ming took a deep breath, and the light in her eyes became stronger. After these days of recovery, her strength was about 60% of her peak state. The energy of the Zodiac Guardian God warriors came from the same source. Although she couldn't absorb it like Chi Yu, with the help of Ian and Hu Guang, who were at least 5 clouds, she immediately used her strongest ability. A bright phoenix cry came from Ming Ming's mouth, and a rainbow light started to fluctuate around her body. A huge amount of energy with a gentle aura enveloped Ming Ming's body. Feathers appeared, and her arms were completely covered. His body also began to change in the 7-colored energy. Young Phoenix transformation. It was the Young Phoenix transformation. With Ming Ming's strength, it was very difficult to use this ability, especially before her strength recovered. However, she had no other choice. Who knew how long Ryue and Su Dong could last under the attack of the two ferocious beasts? She knew very well how important this training was to Chi Yu. Of course, she didn't want anyone to get hurt during the training. Therefore, she used her strongest ability on Hu Guang and Ian's Huqin. The rainbow bird appeared out of thin air. Ming Ming absorbed a large amount of energy from Hu Guang and Ian, and finally completed the Young Phoenix transformation. However, compared to the last time, the light on this Young Phoenix was much dimmer. Ming Ming didn't dare to be negligent. She flapped her huge wings, stirring up a huge wind. Immediately, more than 10 people on the ground were swept up by her energy and flew into the air. Her body flashed, and Ming Ming caught these people on her back. She stretched her wings as far as possible to both sides of her body. In order to save energy, she glided down the mountain. Mo Dan looked at Ming Ming's leaving figure and couldn't help but praise. So beautiful! Sister Ming Ming actually turned into a big bird, so beautiful. Guan Jing said in a bad mood. All right, let's hurry up and go. It's also good to be able to bring another person with me. As he spoke, he barely managed to carry a person on his shoulder and walked down the mountain step by step. Other than Hu Guang and Ian, the other Zodiac Guardian warriors all move. Modi and Guan Ping were the fastest. The two of them grabbed 2 people each, and with their unique running skills, disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chi Yu stood far away in the forest at the foot of the mountain, watching Ming Ming, who had turned into a young phoenix, fly down from the sky. He couldn't help but feel distressed. However, he was very clear that he absolutely couldn't help at this time. Otherwise, if he helped Ming Ming, what would the others think? Since he had decided to carry out the training with the goal of improving everyone's strength, then he must treat everyone equally. With a deep sigh, Chi Yu hid himself with Kirin, and used his spiritual power to cut off all the Zodiac Guardian warriors who could use their spiritual aura to contact him. When Ming Ming finished transporting the first wave of people, the energy in her body was already very depleted. Although the young phoenix transformation could increase her strength, it also consumed a lot of energy. When resisting the hurricane, she didn't take the initiative to attack, but in order to protect her teammates, she had already used up a lot of energy. Gritting her teeth, after sending the people to the village, Ming Ming immediately soared into the sky again. The Zodiac Guardian warriors were transporting their teammates, while Su Dong and Ryue were also fighting with the black and white twin dragons. Ryue constantly let out powerful dragon roars. As she got closer, she could see the terror of the pair of dragons in front of her. Their huge bodies looked like mountains and they were moving very fast. Their huge bodies didn't affect their agility at all. Seeing that they were already in front of them, the huge black dragon suddenly raised its upper body and spat a purple light at Ryue. Chapter 221. With a loud bang, Ryue's delicate body was sent flying. She was shocked to find that the dragon thundercloud force she had unleashed was making popping sounds under the effect of the purple light, as if it was being corroded. At the same time, her body felt numb after being enveloped by the purple light. If she had not been prepared and retreated at the same time as she was bombarded, she would have been injured. A casual attack from the black dragon had such an effect. It was obvious how powerful this beast was. It was not inferior to the golden-winged roc, and its aura was even more terrifying. Ryue's judgment was right. After the deep-sea nether snake evolved into a deep-sea abyssal dragon, it was no longer affected by the environment. It did not need to be in the water to exert its powerful strength. Especially under the influence of Chi Yu, he was not an ordinary deep-sea abyssal dragon, but an abyssal dragon with water and thunder attributes. The attack he launched directly had 2 attributes, and was more than 10,000 years old. Now, even if he encountered a powerful existence like the deep-sea abyssal dragon king, he could still hold on for a certain period of time. Although Ryue's strength was not weak, compared to the evolved deep-sea abyssal dragon, there was still some gap. Seeing Ryue's leg being blasted, Su Dong could not help but panic. He let out a tiger roar, intimidating the 2 dragons on the ground. He put his swollen palms together in front of him, and a strong flame aura condensed into a fire arrow, shooting down. His actual combat experience was no less than Ryue's. After receiving guidance from Chi Yu, he understood that in order to better exert his attack power, he had to make the attack more condensed. Although the 2 dragons below were black and white, from their attributes, they both leaned towards the water attribute. Therefore, Su Dong used his best fire ability. The fire arrow split into 2 in the air, shooting towards the eyes of the black and white dragons. Snow Girl floated in the air. Although she knew that the black and white twin dragons must have received instructions from Chi Yu, she could only start attacking since she could not reveal the truth. She floated in the air, and kept throwing sharp icicles at the twin dragons. Su Dong didn't know much about Snow Girl's strength, so he didn't see that Snow Girl was holding back in her attack. His fire arrow did have a certain impact on the twin dragons. Even with their power, they wouldn't dare to let such a concentrated fire arrow hit their eyes. The deep-sea abyssal dragon secretly cursed Su Dong for being so vicious. Its huge body began to sway left and right at a very fast speed. At the same time, beams of purple energy shrouded Su Dong, who was in the air. The white dragon stood still as if it was watching a show, watching its husband's performance. Su Dong had used up too much energy previously. Under the deep-sea abyssal dragon's attack, he couldn't hold on for long. Just as he was thinking that he was going to die, the deep-sea abyssal dragon's body suddenly trembled, and its continuous attacks stopped. It wasn't that he wanted to go easy, but because the deep-sea abyssal dragon suddenly felt the aura from Ming Ming. Phoenixes were the biggest nemesis of reptilian ferocious beasts like them. Although Ming Ming couldn't really transform into a phoenix yet, the deep-sea abyssal dragon was shocked by the phoenix aura brought by the young phoenix transformation. Because of this, Su Dong had a chance to catch his breath. A loud and angry dragon roar came from behind Su Dong. After being sent flying by the black dragon, Ryue knew that she couldn't resist the two dragons without going all out. Therefore, she chose to transform into her super form while floating in the air. Divine Dragon Transformation. Ryue could use the Divine Dragon Transformation freely after reaching 7 clouds. The huge, crystal-clear dragon body suddenly appeared in the air. Its ruby-like eyes and massive dragon aura immediately attracted the attention of the black and white dragons below. Ryue's dragon aura was different from the black and white dragons. The black dragon was a ferocious beast to begin with, but the white dragon was a transformation of the white flood dragon after it evolved. It wasn't a real divine dragon, but the bloodline that Ryue inherited was the bloodline of the Azure Dragon, one of the 4 ancient divine beasts. Therefore, her dragon aura was more authentic than the black and white dragons. In the eyes of the black and white dragons, she was a natural high-level divine beast. It was just that her abilities were slightly inferior. What surprised them the most was that there was a pair of wings on the back of Ryue's divine dragon, which was different from the dragons they knew. After the transformation, Ryue's abilities were immediately raised to the peak. Although her body was less than a third of the black dragon's size, her aura was already enough to fight against the black dragon. She swung her huge body, and the dragon tail wrapped around Su Dong and threw her away. Then, she flew up and blocked in front of the black and white dragons. The red light in Ryue's eyes became brighter and brighter. Layers of white light spread from the dragon's scales on her body. The pressure that the black and white dragons gave her was too great, so she had to raise her energy to the limit. Ryue's body was very special. Because she had some characteristics of the Western Dragon clan, her strength was even stronger than the traditional dragon warriors. Now that she was facing a strong enemy, the domineering aura in her heart was completely aroused. Not only did she not have any intention of retreating, but her fighting spirit also became stronger. The range of the milky white light was expanding, and the crazy domineering aura was constantly increasing. The black and white dragons looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. This was because they realized that the aura that Ryue was emitting was actually a power that was close to a domain. One should know that a domain was definitely a representation of strength during the era of the ancient beasts. Even with the strength of the deep-sea abyssal dragon after reaching the 10,000-year level, he only had an ordinary domain. And Ryue was recognized by the deep-sea abyssal dragon. How many years had she cultivated? She actually had the power of a domain? Their judgment was not wrong. What Ryue was displaying now was her domain. Ever since Chi Yu told her that if she wanted to become stronger, she had to have her own domain, Ryue had been working hard to cultivate. With her unremitting efforts, she finally used her own Dragon Thundercloud Force as a foundation and found the transformation ability of her own domain. She had found out the transformation ability of her own domain. Although this domain was far from mature, it had become an evolvable domain after Ryu's cultivation. As Ryu's strength continued to improve, it would evolve and become more powerful. Although this domain was far from mature now, under Ryu's cultivation, it had become an evolvable domain. It would evolve and become stronger as Ryu's strength continued to improve. The milky white light was like a cloud in the sky. In this light, Ryu's aura gradually became more and more domineering. Ryu named this domain Dragon's Domain. She named it after the courtyard she lived in. In the Dragon's Domain, her dragon power would be greatly enhanced. After the domain was truly completed, this was the first time Ryu used it against an enemy, apart from the battle with Chiyu. Compared to the previous time, her dragon's domain was much stronger now. A powerful dragon's roar came from Ryu's mouth. The black and white dragons felt their bodies tense up at the same time. An abnormal feeling of oppression appeared in their hearts. Dragon's might. This was dragon's might. To be able to suppress two dragons at the same time with dragon's might was enough for Ryu to be proud. The black dragon raised his head and looked at Ryu in the sky in an unruly manner. His purplish-black eyes began to emit layers of strong energy wave. He also roared. Compared to Ryu's loud and clear voice, it was much deeper. At the same time, a layer of deep purple light emanated from the black dragon's body. That huge wave of energy began to expand rapidly in the shape of a wave. Every time the energy wave fluctuated, the surrounding light would dim a little. It was as if it was covering the sky. It swept towards Ryu's body. After being thrown away by Ryu, Su-dong struggled to control his body. The dizzy feeling made him feel extremely uncomfortable. He also knew that Ryu was doing this for his own good. With his current strength, he was no longer of any help to Ryu. When he calmed down, he saw the black dragon's power. The huge purplish-black light was much larger than Ryu's dragon's domain. In an instant it pushed Ryu's body up, and the dragon's might released by Ryu was also neutralized. What a familiar feeling. Su-dong could not help but feel a little puzzled. Although the black dragon's attack was filled with the aura of fear, this aura of fear was extremely familiar to him. It was as if he had seen it somewhere before. Of course he had seen it before. The technique that Black Dragon was currently using was the violet flame hell that he had used the first time he had met Chiyu. If Chiyu had not used the divine Qilin descent in time, he and Su-dong would have long since been destroyed in the violet flame hell. After evolving to the 10,000-year level, the Black Dragon could use this powerful technique in any situation. It was no wonder that Su-dong felt that it was familiar. Su-dong gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to rush forward to help Ryu again, Snow Girl suddenly let out a cry of surprise. It turned out that the white dragon, who had not moved all this time, finally moved when the black dragon used the purple inferno hell. The huge dragon's body quickly moved forward, and a surging mist was spat out from her mouth. The Snow Girl was enveloped in the mist, and was currently struggling with all her might. She looked like she was in extreme pain. In fact, even Snow Girl did not expect the white dragon to suddenly attack her. The surging mist was filled with powerful energy, and it was abnormally viscous, constantly binding her body. In desperation, Snow Girl did not dare to hold back and could only raise her energy to the limit. She did not try to struggle out. Instead, she completely released her ice ability in an attempt to freeze the mist. With her ability in the ice and snow, it was much easier to deal with her. When Su-dong saw that Snow Girl was in danger, he hurriedly gave up on Ryu. When Ting was already dead, and he knew how important Snow Girl was to Chiyu. Although he knew that he did not have much energy left, he still gritted his teeth and rushed forward. The white dragon's body was 2 sizes smaller than the black dragon's, but it was more agile. When Su-dong was about to launch an attack, he suddenly realized that the white dragon could actually fly. He did not know that as long as a dragon was upgraded, regardless of whether it was a ferocious beast or a divine beast, they could all fly. Not only the white dragon but the black dragon below could also fly. The white dragon rose into the air without warning, and Su Dong had no chance to react. The huge dragon's tail swept heavily on his body, and an irresistible force came instantly, smashing his body down like a rubber ball. Amidst the loud bang, the poor Zodiac tiger left a mark on the snow, but his body was deeply embedded in it. It was as if he was a statue, and even his wings could be clearly seen. The white dragon's attack sent him into a coma. On one side, Su Dong was killed by the white dragon. On the other side, Ryue did not feel good facing the black dragon's purple sun hell. Fortunately, she was in her perfect state. The divine dragon transformation had raised her strength to the limit, and the dragon realm had greatly increased the strength of her dragon power. Only then could she fight against the black dragon. White spots of light condensed around Ryue's body, and the huge dragon wings suddenly flapped. Every spot of white light was like a mini-bomb that bombarded the black dragon's huge body. The penetrating power of the dragon wings crusher was much stronger than before. Although the purple sun hell was like a swamp, and most of the starlight was trapped in it, there were rapid explosions, and the purple sun hell also fluctuated. Some of the starlight successfully passed through the purple sun hell and bombarded the black dragon's body. The black dragon did not expect Ryue to be so strong, and instantly suffered a small loss. The dragon wings crusher had a strong penetrating power. Fortunately, the purple sun hell had neutralized most of the energy. Although the black dragon was in great pain, he did not suffer any real damage. Ryue's domineering aura was obvious at this moment. Although she knew that the other party was stronger than her, she did not have any intention of retreating. The huge dragon wings spread open on her back, and her body suddenly rose into the air. She raised the dragon power in her body to the limit, and the huge dragon power condensed into a huge energy wave that gathered into a ball of light with a diameter of 3 meters in front of her. What was strange was that although the ball of light was huge, the energy that attacked the black dragon was only a thin beam. Just like Su Dong, Ryue had also received guidance from Qi Yuan condensing energy to attack. She knew that when facing a strong enemy, the only way to cause real damage to the enemy was to condense as much energy as possible into a single point to attack. The purple eyes of the black dragon changed slightly. Seeing a white light beam shooting towards his head, he immediately became nervous. He no longer underestimated it. The purple sun hell suddenly shrank and twisted towards the white light beam. However, how could the attack that was condensed from all of Ryue's energy be so easy to block? The huge dragon power condensed in the narrow space was like a solid object. Even though the purple sun hell had shrunk, it was instantly penetrated by the dragon power's attack. However, the obstruction of the purple sun hell gave the black dragon time to prepare. The black dragon suddenly opened its bloody mouth, and a purple electric light shot out from its mouth. The electric light was not like Ryue's light beam, which was connected to her body, and disappeared in a flash. However, the power of that flash caused the light beam shot out by Ryue to be violently bombarded. In an instant, the lightning energy in the air suddenly increased, and in the midst of the loud bang, both Ryue in the air and the black dragon on the ground trembled at the same time. The huge energy wave formed a huge shock wave. It sent Snow Girl, who had just broken through the white dragon's attack, flying a few hundred meters away. The black dragon let out an angry roar, thinking to himself, "How embarrassing!" Qi Yu finally gave him a mission, and he actually got himself an evenly matched opponent. The black dragon's desire to win also increased the black dragon's momentum. Purple energy revolved around his body, and his huge body bombarded the ground for a while. Using the rebound force, he soared into the air and directly pounced in the direction of Ryue. The long-distance battle turned into a close combat battle. The Zodiac Dragon Warrior and the Black Dragon started a battle of experts in the air. Although it was close combat, they did not really collide with each other physically. Their respective dragon powers were emitted from their bodies, and their energy would often collide when they were still a few meters away from each other. In an instant, a series of intense explosions sounded in the sky above the Kunlun mountain range. Each explosion would produce a huge energy wave. Now, even if Snow Girl wanted to help Ryue, it would be difficult for her to get close to the center of the battlefield. White Dragon coiled around the ground, watching the battle between her husband and Ryue. She knew the Black Dragon's strength very well, so she was not worried. Even if she could not win, the Black Dragon would at least not lose against someone of Ryue's level. She still had this bit of confidence. As the battle entered a white-hot state, Ming Ming had already gone back and forth from the mountainside to the camp 5 times. Every time she returned to the mountainside, Ian and Hu Guang would inject energy into her to help her maintain the fledgling phoenix transformation. After 5 consecutive times, Ming Ming's expression became extremely weary. If not for the belief in her heart supporting her, she might have already collapsed. However, with the help of her fledgling phoenix transformation, in a short period of time, half of the people had already been transported back to the camp. Emodan, Guanjing and the other weaker Zodiac warriors had also returned to the camp, while Guan Ping and Modi had also gone back and forth from the mountainside to the camp 3 times. Now, only a few people had not been sent down. Ming Ming, don't come back after you go down this time. Leave the rest to me and Ian. You still haven't found that guy Chiyu? Where did he go? Hu Guang said with some worry. Looking at Ming Ming gritting her teeth while being transported, he couldn't help but feel heartache. The Zodiac warriors had been together for a long time. Hu Guang had always liked Ming Ming and treated her like his own sister. Seeing that Ming Ming was suffering so much, he really couldn't bear to let Ming Ming continue. Ming Ming once again placed the person on her back and looked at the remaining people. There were about 30 youths from the 4 big families lying on the ground. She shook her head and said, "No. If I don't come back, I'm afraid you won't be able to save them in time. If those 2 dragons attack, I'm afraid." Hu Guang also knew that what Ming Ming said was the truth. However, as an underworld boss, in his heart, Ming Ming's health was much more important than the people from the 4 big families. Just when he was about to dissuade Ming Ming again, a voice suddenly sounded. "Ian is right. Ming Ming, you have reached your limit. If you continue, you will hurt your vitality. Listen to me and go down. Leave the rest to me." Chiyu had unknowingly arrived at the waist of the mountain. A wave of pure nature energy was emitted from his hand and injected into Ming Ming's body. Ming Ming's spirit was immediately shaken and her weary appearance disappeared. The fledgling phoenix transformation also once again revealed its rainbow radiance. Seeing Chiyu appear, she immediately calmed down and said, "Chiyu, I'm afraid Sister Ryue can't hold on anymore. You should help her fight off the enemies first." Chiyu said, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. All of you go down. I will directly transport the rest down. Don't let Guan Ping and the rest come up again." In fact, according to Chiyu's original plan, he wanted to train them for a while longer. Under the pressure of the black and white dragons, these Zodiac warriors could stimulate their potential. However, he really couldn't bear to see Ming Ming continue to be transported like this. After all, she was his woman. He still couldn't be completely selfless. Ian said angrily, "I say, Chiyu, where did you go just now? We were almost buried by the avalanche, and there was even a hurricane before that. Is this the era of the ancient beasts you were talking about? Isn't this a little too dangerous?" Chiyu said indifferently, "What? You can't even hold on in such a difficult situation? If this is the case, how can you improve your strength? This is just the beginning. Hurry up and go down the mountain." As he spoke, the green power of wind and clouds began to revolve around his body. With a wave of his right hand, a strong gust of wind blew, and the green energy swept up the remaining youths of the 4 great clans from the ground. Like a huge cushion, it carried their bodies down the mountain. The battle between the Black Dragon and Ryue continued until everyone had gone down the mountain. It wasn't clear who won. When Ryue's thundercloud force was almost exhausted, the Black Dragon suddenly launched a powerful attack. After forcing Ryue back, it immediately escaped with the White Dragon. Although Ryue was strong, she couldn't wait for them to leave. Chiyu didn't come, and she knew that she couldn't defeat the two dragons in front of her. She secretly cursed in her heart. When Chiyu came, she would teach the two of them a lesson. Finally, after experiencing a test of life and death, everyone returned to the camp. The youths of the four families returned after the coldness in their bodies was removed by Ryu and Snow Girl. They didn't even have the strength to crawl back to their respective rooms and immediately fell asleep. Even Mo Dan and Guan Jing were the same. Vol and Yen Xiaoi also barely held on and didn't let themselves fall. Everyone gathered around Chiyu. Guan Ping looked at Chiyu with a strange gaze. Chiyu, what's going on? Could it be that the era of the ancient beasts was so dangerous? If that's the case, I don't think this place is suitable for the four families to train. It's too dangerous. If this continues, I'm afraid there will be casualties tomorrow. Chiyu stood there calmly. The white hair on his head fell naturally, and his hands were behind his back. You have failed today's training. You didn't climb to the top of the mountain. Can't see clearly. Do you think today's training was difficult? The Zodiac warriors who were still awake couldn't help but be stunned. Failed? Not to mention failure, they felt lucky to come back alive. When everyone returned to the camp, even they couldn't believe that no one died. Tornadoes and avalanches. Those were two of the most terrible disasters in nature. Today they actually encountered all of them. Hu Guang said angrily, Chiyu, you still remember to train now. Don't tell me you didn't notice that we were attacked by tornadoes and avalanches. Why did you come to rescue so late? Chiyu, don't. I won't say any more. We will continue tomorrow. The mission is still to climb the first mountain. No. Guan Ping said firmly, Chiyu, calm down. If we continue, I'm afraid even we won't be able to hold on. If it weren't for Ryue's timely arrival, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to escape unscathed. Maybe the natural disaster won't happen again, but those two powerful beasts are enough to pose a threat to us. Maybe we can still protect ourselves, but what about the four families? Don't tell me you want them all to die here? Judging from their current physical condition, whether they can get up tomorrow morning is still a problem. Chiyu turned his body to Guan Ping and said, You don't need to worry about this. Hurry up and go rest. Tomorrow morning, you will naturally understand why I let you continue training. You don't need to participate in tomorrow morning's training. The 120 people from the four families will go up the mountain by themselves. Alright, let's all go rest and have something to eat. While speaking, he pressed his right hand on the Kirin bead on his chest. With a burst of dense chi, a large number of fruits suddenly appeared on the ground. Seeing these fruits, the Zodiac Guardian warriors looked a little better. In their hearts, they all thought that he went to pick fruits for them. No wonder the rescue was a little late. Although they were puzzled why he asked them to continue training tomorrow, they still ate the fruits and relaxed their bodies to rest. After everything that happened before, they were now in urgent need of energy replenishment. Food was naturally one of the good choices. The entire training only lasted about 3 hours. After instructing everyone, he immediately returned to Ryue's stone house to cultivate. At this time, Ryue's state was less than 30% of her best. She had used all her strength in the battle with the Black Dragon. If the Black Dragon hadn't suddenly left at the end, perhaps she would have been the one who lost. When the Zodiac Guardian warriors returned to their respective rooms to cultivate and recover, a person quietly walked out of the room. At this time, in the entire camp, he was probably the only one who was still awake. Feeling the uniform breathing sound in the camp, Chiyu couldn't help but sigh and said to himself, I hope you can understand my painstaking efforts. As long as it's possible, I won't let anyone get hurt. If you don't really struggle on the edge of life and death, how can you grow quickly? even if this edge of life and death is created by me for you." After saying this, Chiyu's figure disappeared from a room of the four families. He didn't help these people, but he supported their bodies with energy, maintaining a meditative state, and used his thundercloud force to activate their own energy. After all, these young people had cultivated for a long time. As long as the energy was activated, they would automatically cultivate according to the original method. After helping everyone enter the state of cultivation, it was already an hour later. Returning to the empty space, Chiyu raised his head to look at the sky, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Old friend, you're here?" As he said this, he soared into the sky and stretched his arms to his sides, drawing a beautiful arc as he flew towards the direction of the primeval forest. Familiar auras quickly approached each other. Chiyu's flying body stopped, and he quietly waited in midair for something. Time compensated. A fiery red figure practically flickered in his direction. It was so fast that the naked eye couldn't see it clearly. However, it didn't affect Chiyu's perception of it. After all, Chiyu used the mind's eye to see everything in the world. In a place full of natural energy, the mind's eye could be used much more effectively than in the modern world. "Senior Emohua, you've come." Chiyu smiled and greeted him. Yes, it was Emohua. At this moment, he didn't reveal his original form. Instead, he had transformed into a handsome middle-aged man and appeared in front of Chiyu in the blink of an eye. He couldn't help but be shocked when he saw Chiyu's appearance. "Chiyu, how did you become like this? Did something happen? I rushed over as soon as I sensed your aura." As the king of the divine beasts and the patriarch of the Kirin clan, Emohua was naturally the most sensitive to Kirin's aura. How could he not sense Chiyu's sudden appearance in the era of the ancient beasts? Emohua was overjoyed when he realized that Lu Xian had appeared. He put down everything he was doing and rushed over as fast as he could. Chiyu smiled bitterly and said, "It's a long story. I've brought many people with me this time, as well as the weapons you need. Senior Emohua, how's the situation here? Are the beasts still as savage as before?" Emohua sighed and said, "Sometimes, the appearance of a hero is enough to change the entire situation, and you're our hero. After you extended the lifespan of us old fellows, the confidence of the entire Qilin clan rose. Especially after I received the news that you had already subdued the Ox Demon King, I immediately began to organize our mythological beast members to launch a counterattack against the ferocious beast. Before the appearance of the Ox Demon King, the ferocious beasts were not a monolithic block. They had never been. Therefore, even though they outnumbered us mythological beasts, it was difficult for them to gain any advantage in front of us. Now that the king of the beasts, the Bull Demon King, had disappeared, the beasts that were originally united were divided once again. Given their selfish nature, they naturally wouldn't be willing to serve someone else as their king. The three great beast kings each led a group of people and divided the entire beasts' camp into three groups. This gave us a chance. After the battle at the airport, we divine beasts have gradually turned the tables on the beasts. Even though they have organized a few powerful counterattacks, we only launched our attacks when they were separated and gained a lot of advantages. I believe that in 100 years at most, we divine beasts will be able to suppress the beasts again. By that time, the Kirin kids will have grown up, and it won't be the Chaos King's turn to show off his power. Chapter 222. The expression in Blackfire's eyes changed. He sighed and said, "The situation isn't too good. After all, we have placed all our focus on fighting against the beast. We also have to film educational films to avoid large-scale attacks from the beast. Naturally, we don't have enough time to take care of the humans. After the Yu clan's headquarters was destroyed, the humans became much weaker. Their overall strength is no match for the Jili people. During this period of time, half of the 4 great human clans have been destroyed by the Jili people. Now they can only gather together and fight against the Jili people. You came at the right time. I hope that the weapons you mentioned can help them turn the situation around. Unfortunately, the Jili people are too powerful. It is said that Chiyu has been reborn. Even we can't find the true headquarters of the Jili people. Now that you're back, if it's possible, could you help the humans? Chiyu nodded and said, I have the same thought, but now is not the time. I still need a month before I can show myself. How about this, if it is convenient for you, Elder Blackfire, please take care of the humans during this month. After I go over, you can focus on fighting against the beast. How about that? Blackfire thought for a moment and said, that shouldn't be a problem. We just had a huge battle with the beasts not long ago. Both sides need to recuperate. Oh right, the 4 great human clans are currently gathered at the Earth's side. You should be very familiar with that place and should be able to find them. The leader of the humans is your mother. However, her strength alone is still limited. After hearing Blackfire's words, Chiyu couldn't help but think of Irua's appearance. Mother, what a heartwarming word. Elder, don't worry. I will definitely bring people over within a month. However, I still need you to tell the humans that the weapons cannot be given for free. They have to exchange for them with fruits. A lot of fruits. Blackfire laughed heartily and said, that's not a problem. The humans have nothing but fruit. There are plenty in the forest. I will ask them to prepare them for you. Since I have confirmed that you have returned, I will return. I will tell your mother this good news as soon as possible. Don't let her wait too long. Chiyu nodded and said, don't worry. I'll be there as soon as possible. The fiery red figure lit up, and Emohua disappeared in front of Chiyu. Taking a deep breath, Chiyu knew that he could continue with his plan. Everything was similar to what he had predicted. Although the Bull Demon King was no longer a powerful threat, giving the mythological beasts a chance to rise again, it would still take a long time for them to recover from the disadvantage they had been in for a long time. The human race was at a critical juncture of life and death. All of this was an opportunity for the Zodiac Guardian God warriors and the youths of the 4 major families to train. 1 month, there was only 1 month left. I hope they can grow faster. Otherwise, when it came to the real battlefield, even he might not be able to take care of everyone. At that time, casualties might really occur. Back at the campsite, Chiyu cultivated until nighttime. No one woke up. After all, the consumption during the day was too much for them. Especially those from the 4 great clans. They had never experienced so many dangerous situations. Without Chiyu, they might not be able to recover in a week, let alone a day. However, with the 4 auspicious clouds in Kirin here, how could the training be interrupted? With his spiritual power, he sensed that Ryue was still in a meditative state. Under the influence of his source of nature, her thundercloud force was recovering very quickly. In about an hour, she would be back to her best state. He stood up from the ground lightly. Chiyu suddenly had an urge to kiss Ryue. At this time, he could not help but think of everything that happened with the Snow Girl when he had just returned to the era of the ancient beasts. Kirin's desire in that aspect had always been very strong. Although the sadness made Chiyu put his mind on other things, the desire that was aroused by the Snow Girl began to burn again. However, at this time, it was obviously not the time to pursue his desire. The spiritual power that was restrained because of the training was released again. Chiyu sensed the breath of everyone in the camp. Most of the people from the 4 great clans were gradually returning to normal. After all, resting during training was much better than sleeping. Their weak breathing became calm again. Taking a deep breath, Chiyu began to mobilize the thundercloud force in his body. Purple, blue, red, and the 4 colors of light flickered on his body. A faint shadow of Kirin appeared around his body. Kirin's breath appeared. Chiyu was actually very satisfied with the first day of the training. First of all, the training made everyone use their full strength in a crisis. Some of them even performed better than usual. This stimulated their potential to a certain extent. At the same time, and more importantly, after today's battle, The relationship between all the Zodiac Guardian warriors and the people from the 4 great clans had changed. The originally unharmonious relationship had become much closer because of the life and death experience. This was what Chi Yu wanted to see the most. He did not want the people he had trained to not belong to him in the end. Increasing the strength of these more than 100 young people would certainly strengthen the 4 great clans as a whole. However, could the leaders of the 4 great clans imagine what decisions these young people would make in the future? Chi Yu hoped that through these people, the Zodiac Guardian warriors and the 4 great clans could really reach a tacit understanding and cooperative relationship. After all, the number of Zodiac Guardian warriors was limited. With the help of the 4 great clans, it would be much easier to deal with anything. Kiran's breath began to spread out from the stone house. The 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors were the first to be affected. They were very sensitive to Kiran's breath. Under the effect of Kiran's breath, their training speed was much faster than usual. The weaker the Zodiac Guardian warriors were, the more clearly they could feel it. Chi Yu's Kiran's thundercloud force prompted them to obtain more energy in the process of training than usual. Chi Yu concentrated his spiritual power and first helped Emodan and Guan Jing to transform their bodies. Although he had helped them transform before, they had only cultivated for a short time after all. Their physical conditions were not good, so he had to deliberately take care of them. It was much easier to use the energy of the origin of nature in the era of ancient beasts than in the modern era. Here, Chi Yu could get rich supplies. With the large original forest, he did not even need to care about his own energy consumption. Under the effect of the energy of the origin of nature, Guan Jing and Emodan's bodies were transformed. Although it did not directly improve their thundercloud force, it laid a firm foundation for their future training. The origin of nature did not stop. The energy turned and began to cover the qualification camp as a whole. This time, Chi Yu was indiscriminately assisting. He did not transform anything. Instead, he spread the natural energy he absorbed from nature into the camp through his spiritual power and forcibly injected it into everyone's body. Although it was not a transformation, with such a neutral and peaceful origin of nature energy, everyone had obtained great benefits. Similarly, the weaker one was, the greater the benefits. The 120 youths from the 4 families had been greatly affected by the energy of the origin of nature. Their bodies had already been greatly affected, especially since their bodies were now extremely weak. This made it so that they would not have any resistance towards the energy of the source of nature, making the absorption even more direct. The energy of the origin of nature covered the entire camp for a full hour. When everything was completed, Chi Yu found that Ryue had already woken up from her training. I now understand why you said that they can continue to participate in the training tomorrow. Chi Yu, you really put in a lot of effort, but why didn't you tell everyone? Ryue walked gently to Chi Yu's side and held his arm. Chi Yu, it's not that I don't want to tell them, but if I tell everyone the truth, they will feel that no matter how difficult the training is, I will save them in the end. In this way, the original purpose of training will be lost. Only by emitting a strong desire to survive and completely stimulating one's potential is the best way to improve one's strength, isn't it? Ryue smiled and said, I understand. Chi Yu, tell me, did you summon those 2 dragons today? Chi Yu was stunned and said, How did you know? Ryue said, Why wouldn't I know? Although they launched an attack on us, I also felt that I was facing a huge pressure and seemed unable to resist. But after I came back, I thought about it carefully. Although the pressure brought by those 2 dragons was huge, they didn't have any killing intent. In other words, they didn't really intend to hurt us. When I was already close to my limit, the white dragon whose strength wasn't much inferior to it didn't join in. Isn't that enough to explain the problem? But what I don't understand is, why would they be used by you? Chi Yu pulled Ryue into his arms and said with a smile, You're always so smart, making me feel more and more pressured. You're right, they were also summoned by me. Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence, a hurricane and an avalanche? Ryue giggled and said, "If everyone knew that these were all caused by you, I'm afraid they would fight you to the death." Chiyu shrugged and said, "I'm also doing it for their own good. However, I don't think the possibility of them daring to challenge me is too high. Actually, I also want to fight first. Why don't you encourage them?" Ryue said unhappily, "Forget it, do you think I don't know how strong you are? Based on the state you showed when you activated the Kunlun mirrors that day, even if all of us work together, we might not be able to win. I hope that Dan, Guanjing and the others can quickly grow up. If that happens, if we all have the strength of 5 clouds and above, you won't be able to do anything." Chiyu sighed and said, "I actually hope that they can quickly grow up. This time's training, at least everyone has to reach 5 clouds and above. At that time, we can start training according to the cultivation method that Master Zagru taught me. Only then can we, the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors, become truly powerful." Ryue turned around in Chi-Yu's arms and faced Chi-Yu directly. Her plump breasts pressed against his chest, and she said in a sweet voice, "Chi-Yu, you haven't loved me for a long time." Chi-Yu's heart suddenly beat faster and he said, "Now is not a good time. We still have the training tomorrow. Since it has already started, we all have to work hard, and you can't be an exception." Ryue pouted her small mouth. She looked like a little girl who had her first awakening of love. "Is that so? You're so honest. I don't think it's right. Tell me, what did you do to Schwer?" "Don't think that I don't know." Chiyu was shocked and looked at Ryue absent-mindedly. Ryue snorted and said, "You what? You and I are both experienced people. Do you think that I am Ming Ming? You can't see anything. Although Snow Girl hid it very well, and her body is indeed different from us, but when a woman does that kind of thing, there will be some changes. Especially when she looks at you, it's not like she's looking at her father. Don't lie to me, tell me the truth." Chiyu couldn't say that he was raped by Snow Girl. He could only smile bitterly and said, "All right, I'll tell you the truth. I couldn't control myself. If you want to hit me or punish me, I'll admit it. Schwerer, you really caused trouble for your father." Ryue giggled and said, "Then you should properly comfort this queen who has been worried about you for so long." Chiyu was stunned. He looked at Ryue's eyebrows and said in surprise, "Don't you think the matter between me and Schwerer is too?" Ryue said impatiently. "Don't you think I don't know? Since I have chosen you, there is nothing for me to be picky about. Do as you please. I know that you are a person with a sense of propriety. I have long known about Snow Girl's feelings for you. When Ting was still around, she once told me and discussed it with me. We all think that Snow Girl is not bad. Let's not talk about the Kunlun mirrors that will be of great help to you. She is kind and lovely, and she was willing to sacrifice her life to save you in England. She deserves your love. Find a chance in the future and change the relationship between the two of you. We are already used to your ability in this aspect. Do you really think that Snow Girl is only your daughter? No one is blind." Chiyu looked at Ryue in a daze and could not help but feel a little guilty. He did not know what to say for a moment. Ryue looked at the sky outside through the window of the stone house and leaned against Chiyu's chest. "What are you waiting for? Today is your punishment. Don't think about the crystal love anymore." I didn't think about it. Only a ghost would believe you. Come, quickly serve this queen." Ryue's teasing voice made Chi-Yu's heart burn with desire. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Ah, don't kiss there, you pervert." "Your Majesty, didn't you ask me to serve you?" "Don't run, I'm coming." Mental strength could sometimes be used for other purposes. At this moment, Chi-Yu specially used it to make a soundproof barrier. The stone cave became a stone house, but the main character did not change. The feeling of love instantly spread to every corner of the stone house. Ryue's gentleness and magnanimity moved Chi-Yu from the bottom of his heart. This night, under his deliberate flattery, he gently sent Ryue to the peak of bliss again and again. It also quietly dissolved the worries and sadness in her heart these days. In the early morning, when the bright sunlight from the ancient beast age shone on the entire campsite, exclamations sounded one after another. Even the youths of the 4 major clans did not expect that after yesterday's torment, they could actually climb out of bed today. Moreover, every one of them was full of vigor and vitality. Compared to before, they seemed to have more strength. Even the energy in their bodies had become stronger. Their bodies felt full of strength, as if they could go through yesterday's situation again. The situation of these 120 youths was soon discovered by the Zodiac guardian god warriors, who woke up one after another. They were not too surprised. When they cultivated last night, they understood everything from the nature energy that Chi-Yu transmitted to them. They could not help but admire Chi-Yu secretly. It turned out that she had already calculated everything, and their expectations for this group training became stronger. Very quickly, Chi-Yu issued the order. The 12 captains stood on standby while the 120 youths from the 4 great clans advanced with light gear. Once again, they began to ascend the 3,000-meter peak. Everyone's confidence was greatly boosted. After all, based on their understanding, it was impossible for them to be so unlucky as to encounter tornadoes and avalanches every day. Although the 3,000-meter high mountain was very high, if it was just climbing the mountain, it would not be a big problem for them. When the black and white twin dragons appeared yesterday, these youths had already fainted. Therefore, no one knew that what awaited them now would be even more terrifying ferocious beasts and mythological beasts than yesterday. In addition to these 120 people, Chi-Yu also let another person go with them, and that person was Jida. Jida cultivated the virtue of martial arts, and did not have any special ability. This kind of special environment test was also useful to improve his strength. Since he cultivated martial arts, Chi-Yu's main goal for him was to train his body to an abnormal state. Watching the 120 youths divided into 12 teams and left, Guan Ping could not help but look at Chi-Yu with some worry. Do you really not need us to go with them? What if the 2 ferocious beasts from yesterday appear again? Chi-Yu smiled and said, that depends on their ability. If they want to really hone their skills, they must experience a real crisis of life and death. Well, our training is also about to start. Don't worry, my spiritual force is always following them. Once there is danger, I will rush to their side at the first moment. Guan Ping smiled and said, it seems that everything is going according to your plan. I was worrying too much. Well, today, how are you going to torture us? Chi-Yu cracked his knuckles. Although he couldn't see, when his eyes swept across each and every one of them, the powerful Zodiac guardian god warriors couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. Especially Emodan, she had opposed Chi-Yu more than once in the past. Ever since she saw Chi-Yu using the solar lunisolar golden armor, she had been very guilty. At that time, she understood why Chi-Yu could become the king of the Zodiac. This young man who looked to be in his 20s had the qualifications to be proud. And among the Zodiac guardian warriors, perhaps only Guan Jing's strength was similar to his. Now, she did not dare to offend Chi-Yu, for fear that Chi-Yu would take revenge on her. Yan Xiaoi looked at Chi-Yu's hand movements and could not help but be shocked. Boss, you are not going to do another group PK, are you? Chi-Yu snorted and said, why? Do you want to get beaten up? I'm happy to fulfill your wish. Today, everyone take a break and think about your performance during the natural disaster yesterday. At the same time, practice your thundercloud force. During the era of the ancient beasts, all the energy molecules were much more abundant than in our era. You must have felt it during last night's practice. Since we are here, we cannot waste a single minute. Alright, let's start practicing. Emodan, Guanjing, Vol, Yan Xiaoi, the 4 of you, Plant Soul Sister and Shangbing, follow me. As he said this, he turned and walked towards the direction of the primeval forest. Hu Guang looked at Yan Xiaoi and smiled, giving him a look of wishing him luck. He even sat comfortably on the ground and said to himself, It's really a blessing not to be abused. Yan Xiaoyi looked at his proud look, and could not help but feel annoyed, but there was nothing he could do. He could only give him a middle finger, then reluctantly followed behind Qi Yu towards the primeval forest. Emodan was nervous, thinking that Qi Yu was not looking for a chance to take revenge on her, right? Fortunately, Vol and the others were following him, otherwise, he would have turned around and run away. After Qi Yu led the 6 people into the primeval forest, they walked for about 200 meters before stopping. He turned to the 6 people and said, "Now, you will all start the special training. Shangbing, you and the plant soul will form a group. Xiao Yi, you and the 4 Zodiac warriors will form a group. From now on, no one is allowed to show mercy. The one who loses will become my enemy. From now on, plant soul sister, teach them a good lesson for me, don't give me any face." As he said this, Qi Yu's feet touched the ground, and he floated above the forest. He stepped on a soft branch, and quietly looked at the 6 people below. At this time, Emodan was relieved that he did not have to face Qi Yu. He was the first to move, and with a roar, he rushed towards the plant soul like a rubber ball. He lowered his head, and a faint yellow light covered his whole body. Charge. This was one of the battle skills of the Zodiac warrior. However, with his current strength of 2 clouds, it looked like a meatball. Of course, don't underestimate Emodan's attack. Compared to ordinary people, he was still much stronger. Even if he were to bump into a huge tree, it would immediately snap in half. Yan Xiaoyi did not advance but retreated instead. A milky white light quickly spread from his body to the armor, while Vol stood in front of him. At the same time, he kicked Guanjing's butt and said, "Hurry up." Although Shangbing was surprised by Qi Yu's arrangements, once the battle started, she immediately entered a state of mind. As an assassin nurtured by the Dark Council, perhaps his comprehensive ability was inferior to the plant soul. However, the leopard girl's speed and tyrannical attack power were still very strong. Her body flashed, leaving behind a series of afterimages, and Shangbing immediately disappeared from the front. In the next moment, she had already arrived beside Guanjing and kicked his butt. Before Guanjing could even react, his body had already been kicked out like a balloon. Emodan had already rushed in front of the plant spirit. She did not know much about the plant spirit, and she did not see the plant spirit do anything yesterday. From what she knew, this cute girl, who was not much older than her, should not have any powerful abilities. However, she quickly realized that her judgment was completely wrong. Just as her body was about to reach the plant soul, her feet suddenly tightened, as if she was entangled by something. Her strong momentum did not decrease, but her feet could not move. With a boom, her fat body fell heavily to the ground. Her head was just 10 centimeters away from the plant soul. The plant soul giggled and quickly retreated. In the Yen Huang soul there was a huge transformation. Never fight with the plant soul in the forest. In the forest, the living soul would be able to unleash its full strength. And the primeval forest of the ancient beasts was many times stronger than the current forest. The plant soul's body had just been modified by Qi Yu recently, and its strength had increased greatly. It was definitely not something that could be compared to before. With just a vine entanglement, it was able to knock down the Zodiac cow. Her next action caused Yan Xiaoyi and Vol to turn pale with fright. The plant soul's body disappeared, and all the plants around them, whether they were herbaceous or woody plants, grew rapidly. In the blink of an eye, they were surrounded by lush greenery. This lush greenery was like a huge barrier, and began to press down on their bodies. Yan Xiaoyi's skills were mainly healing and defense. Seeing the changes around him, he did not choose to rush out. Instead, he quickly went to Emodan's side. Although he did not have a good impression of Emodan, they were now facing a common enemy. A milky white light pressed on Emodan's back, and a gentle energy emitted a dispelling skill, dispelling the vines that entangled her and pulled her up. The sheep Zodiac warrior was undoubtedly the weakest among all the Zodiac Guardian warriors. However, its strength in other aspects was still incomparable to that of the other Zodiac Guardian warriors. Besides healing and defense, dispelling all kinds of abnormal statuses was Yan Xiaoyi's forte. This was also the reason why he always went against the snake Zodiac Hu Guang. Although the powerful venom of Hu Guang was not something that Yan Xiaoyi could resist, if he was at the same level as Hu Guang, he would be able to dispel the venom of Hu Guang with a dispelling skill. It could be considered a natural nemesis. Mo Dan looked at Yan Xiaoyi gratefully, and looked at the vines on the ground angrily. Her body emitted a layer of yellow light, and a pair of yellow horns grew out of her head. She quickly picked off the vines in front of them. Vol was not idle either. As the rat Zodiac, he was the #1 guardian warrior. He only had one skill, and that was the world's most nimble hands. It was a perfect match for the rabbit Zodiac warrior's world's most nimble legs. At this time, Vol's chubby hands were already moving, and countless palm shadows appeared in front of him. No matter which direction the plant spirit came from, it was quickly picked off by the gray light on his hands. Together with Mo Dan, they could still deal with the attacks of the plant spirit for the time being. However, would the plant spirit, one of the strongest offensive experts of the yellow flame spirits, be so easy to deal with? If someone from the Yan Huang Soul sect was here and saw this scene, they would immediately judge that this attack was just the prelude to the storm. I want to hit all of them. Shang Bing's voice suddenly rang out. The plants around the three of them suddenly shook, and a huge crack appeared. Before the three of them could react, a huge body had already flown out from the crack, like a huge cannonball, towards the three of them. It was Guan Jing, who had been kicked away by Shang Bing previously. As the pig Zodiac, Guan Jing had already used his skills to the limit. His body was extremely inflated, like a big ball. Although he had been kicked by Shang Bing, his body's defense allowed him to be like a ball, and he did not suffer any damage. At this time, he was kicked back again, and seeing that he was about to hit Mo Dan's horns, he could not help but scream in fear. Vol's figure flashed, and he was already beside Mo Dan. At the same time, his hands moved up and down, and at the same time, he moved with his short body. Palm after palm landed on Guan Jing's body, and he was so clever that he was able to quickly dissolve the attack of Shang Bing. He put Guan Jing down. The 4 Zodiac Guardian God warriors gathered together, and all heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. Yan Xiaoyi began to use his dispel skill on the surrounding plant. He tested it, and it was indeed effective. Although it could not completely stop the plants from spreading, it at least reduced the speed of spreading by 2/3, which gave them more time to breathe. At this time, the plants around them began to defend themselves. All kinds of flowers and grass floated up, and turned into countless sharp blades, attacking their bodies. In an instant, the surrounding plants turned black, and the smell of death began to fill the small space where they were. Chapter 223. After giving the plant soul a few instructions, Chi-Yu floated up and flew back to the camp. Was it really just to let the Zodiac Guardian God warriors cultivate in comfort? Of course not. When Chi-Yu returned to the camp, his first order was for the Zodiac Guardian God warriors to rescue the people who went up the mountain. This was because the youths from the 4 families were being baptized by the twin dragons. The same torturous training was being carried out today. When the sky turned dark, the black and white twin dragons retreated again. Everyone crawled back to the camp. Compared to yesterday, the situation today was even more miserable. At least another set of clothes was destroyed. The plant soul and Shang Bing completely treated Guan Jing and the other 3 as sandbags. Although they controlled their strength, they still beat them up badly. Even their parents might not be able to recognize them. Mo Dan was arrogant. As soon as he returned to the camp, he went into his room that seemed like it could collapse at any time without saying a word. He immediately started cultivating. The others were in a similar situation. Compared to yesterday, none of them had fainted. However, none of them were complete either. If the 8 Zodiac guardian god warriors who went up the mountain worked together, they might be able to defeat the black and white twin dragons. However, how could Chi-Yu let them succeed? When they went up the mountain, Chi-Yu also quietly went up the mountain. However, he was not going to help them. Instead, he was going to help the black and white twin dragons. With Chi-Yu's strength, he only needed to send his thundercloud force and water thundercloud force to the black and white twin dragons from afar, and it would be enough for the Zodiac guardian god warriors to suffer. Even Ryue suspected that the 2 dragons had taken aphrodisiac. Compared to yesterday, their attacks were obviously a few levels higher. If it wasn't for the fact that they used different attacks, she would even suspect that Chi-Yu had lost control of them. A month of arduous training began. The intensity of training increased every day. The sadistic training did not last for 5 days, and there would be 2 days of rest. Of course, that was not a real rest. However, without the attack of the twin dragons, everyone would need to climb over at least 5 peaks of the Kunlun mountain range. According to the level of the thundercloud force, the Zodiac guardian warriors would need to climb over 1 more mountain for every additional cloud. Yao Yao knew that the altitude of the later peaks would rarely be lower than 4,000 meters. Even with the physique of the Zodiac guardian warriors, it was extremely difficult for them to endure it. On the 5th day of the training, Ming Ming's body had completely recovered. Everyone was subtly and quietly changing. It was just that they couldn't feel it. After all, he was hovering on the edge of death every day. The only thing they could think of was how to survive better. There was no more time to think about anything else. Other than training, they could only meditate and cultivate. Every night, Chi-Yu used the natural energy to help them recover their bodies was the most enjoyable time of the day. As the intensity of the training increased, the release of the natural energy became longer and longer. During this period, apart from paying attention to everyone's training, Chi-Yu was also very strict with himself. He put all his spiritual force into the cultivation of the natural source. He knew that the natural source would be the source of all his energy. If he wanted to surpass all the Qilins when he reached the 9-cloud realm and become the strongest among the Qilins, he would have to possess a powerful origin of nature. He wanted to become the strongest among the Qilins and hope that the mutation of his body would bring about the best situation. After all, it was the only thing that could help him produce a physical mutation. Therefore, Chi-Yu was not in a hurry to cultivate his 4 kinds of thundercloud force to the 7-cloud realm. Every day, he would only use an hour to cultivate the 4 kinds of thundercloud force, and the rest of the time was used to absorb the natural energy. A month passed in pain and suffering, and the bodies of the Zodiac guardian warriors had changed. Ryue, Ming Ming, and the other girls' delicate and white skin had now become a healthy color. Although they were still delicate, their darker skin made them resent Chi-Yu a lot. The ones who changed the most were the fatso. Except for Guanjing, Vol and Emodan had lost a lot of weight. Vol looked much more energetic than before. His body was no longer so bloated, and he became strong and muscular. And Emodan's change was huge. Her weight had been reduced by 1/3 in just a month. Although she still looked a little fat, compared to her original appearance, without makeup, her original appearance gradually appeared. Her arrogance seemed to have been worn away by the hard training, and her appearance gradually became delicate because of losing weight. Only the plump chest did not change much. She was indeed a cow. The changes in the 120 people from the 4 great families were also very obvious. Everyone's skin had become a healthy bronze color, and their gazes were clearly much sharper than before. Their energy levels had also improved greatly. The month of training had caused them to forget about the families they belonged to. Right now, there was only their own team in their hearts. Every day, they experienced the process of life and death, and almost every one of them had been rescued by others in the same team, pulled back from the brink of death. This caused them to no longer have any ill feelings between them, and they had become close comrades. And the relationship between the members of each team and their team leader had also become very close. Almost every day, the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors would rescue their subordinates many times, and through various kinds of training, they would teach some of their skills to these people, so that they could better improve their strength. All this was gradually completed according to Chi-Yu's plan. It was already the last day of the month. Chi-Yu gathered everyone in the open space in the center of the camp, and first distributed enough fruits for everyone to eat. Speaking of these fruits, they were one of the most important factors that had improved everyone's bodies. Without the city's flashy and toxic effects of alcohol and tobacco, eating these nutritious fruits every day had allowed everyone to better absorb the natural energy released by Chi-Yu. That was why they were able to achieve their current result. This was also one of the reasons why Chi-Yu had to set the training in the era of ancient beasts. Sighing at the changes in everyone's aura in the open space, Chi-Yu could not help but reveal a sincere smile. Although he could not see, he could clearly feel that everyone present had changed, whether it was the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors or the 120 people from the 4 big families. Now, he no longer used the 4 big families to describe these youths, but directly called them by the names of their respective teams. For example, Vol and his subordinates were called the Zodiac Mouse Team, and so on. Although Chi-Yu did not participate in the training, the 12 Zodiac squads were indeed the most grateful to him. No one was blind, they knew very well that in the past month, they could recover from the exhaustion of the previous night to become energetic and lively every morning, completely relying on Chi-Yu's amazing natural energy. Chi-Yu helped them unreservedly, causing the members of the 12 Zodiac squads to respect him from the bottom of their hearts. Chi-Yu did not speak much every day, only giving orders. However, after a month had passed, no one had collapsed because of the high-intensity training. What did this mean? Jida, Shangbing, and Plant Soul could be said to be outside of the 12 Zodiac squads, but their improvement was no less than that of the members of the 12 Zodiac squads. They were also participating in the same training. Apart from the special care given to Guan Jing and the other 3, Chi-Yu paid the most attention to them. The energy of the spring of nature was not stingy in transforming their bodies. Although the daily training was very hard, they all knew that they had changed too much in the past month. In this 1 month, they had changed too much. Sometimes, even they found it hard to believe that they could actually become so much stronger than before. Chi-Yu stood in the middle of the open space, still dressed in black. He still had the same pale hair. However, the way everyone looked at him was different from when they first arrived. Now, regardless of age, all the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors called him boss. It was the same for the members of the 12 Zodiac squads. It was Chi-Yu's selfless contribution that allowed them to persist in this month's training. That was why they could improve so much now. From the initial dissatisfaction to the present sincere gratitude, they saw too much in Chi-Yu. Everyone has worked hard. We have been here for almost a month. I think everyone can see that this is not the era that belongs to us. I am very happy that each of you can persist until the end. You did not let me down. However, I also hope that everyone can understand that the training has just begun. Although you have improved to a certain extent, especially in terms of cooperation and combat experience, it is still far from enough. In our era, it is very difficult to have large-scale battles, especially cold weapons, to hone your skills. However, it is different here. According to my plan, 3 days later, we will embark on a new journey of training. This time, you will face an even more dangerous situation. If you want to return to our era alive, you will have to put in 200% of your effort. Soon, we will climb the majestic Kunlun mountain range in front of us for the last time. Today, there will be no more attacks from divine beasts and ominous beasts, but it is indeed an opportunity for each of you. However, there is still danger. Everyone must strictly obey orders, otherwise, I will not be able to save you. All teams, according to the Zodiac, set off. Chi-Yu did not say what he was going to do. He floated up and was the first to fly in the direction of the Kunlun mountain range. Shangbing, Jida, and the plant soul followed closely behind him. None of the members of the 12th Zodiac team said anything. After a month of training, they had developed a good habit of obeying orders. They followed closely behind their captain, forming a long meandering dragon behind Chiyu, and set off in the direction of the Kunlun mountain range. The speed of climbing was very fast. After the transformation of their bodies by the source of nature and a month of hard training, climbing mountains was as easy as eating for these young people. As soon as the long meandering dragon entered the range of the Kunlun mountain range, under the leadership of Chiyu, it began to move forward like a jumping star. It moved forward at an amazing speed. Every once in a while, Chiyu would look back to see that no one in the 12th Zodiac team was left behind. 1 month of training was not in vain. He had his own purpose today, and it was a very simple one. It could be said that the previous month of training was all for today's sake. Crossing mountains and ridges began. The 12th Zodiac team climbed over one mountain after another. From the beginning, their light pace gradually became heavy. When they climbed over the third mountain, that was 6,000 meters high, Chiyu ordered everyone to take a break. At this time, they had already entered the inner part of the Kunlun mountain range. In the recent training, even the strongest members of the 12th Zodiac team began to return to the inner part of the mountain range. As the overall strength of more than 100 people increased, although the black and white dragons were powerful, facing so many enemies, and with the support of Chiyu, they could not hold on much longer. After all, the strength that Chiyu gave them was limited, and the enemies they had to face were more than 100 people every day. Every day's improvement increased the combat strength of the 12th Zodiac team. The improvement of one person was not a big deal, but the improvement of more than 100 people at the same time was absolutely terrifying. The overall strength of the 12th Zodiac team was improving at an extremely fast speed, especially as the teams became more and more proficient in their joint attack skills. Now, under the leadership of the 12 Zodiac Guardian Gods, even with Chi-Yu's full support, the black and white dragons only dared to occasionally launch sneak attacks. They did not dare to confront the 12th Zodiac team head-on. A faint light shone in Chi-Yu's eyes. She could already feel the cold aura from afar. After Chi-Yu gave the order to rest, the 12th Zodiac team did not talk to each other. Instead, they seized this short time to cultivate and strive to achieve the best recovery effect in the shortest time possible. This was also the principle that they understood after a month of training. Before the end of the training, every second was extremely precious to them. A faint light flickered, and everyone exuded a different aura. After the start of the break, the 12th Zodiac team disorganized themselves. Originally, the people of the 4 families gathered together. Because the attributes of their family's cultivation were very similar, they could better absorb the energy molecules of the air clock when they gathered together. This way, they could obtain the greatest improvement in a short period of time. The strength of the Zodiac Guardian God warriors was naturally much stronger than that of the young people of the 4 families. At this time, although they were a little tired, they did not rest. Instead, they took the initiative to gather around Chiyu. Ryue said, "Chiyu, do we still continue to move forward? The members of each team are quite exhausted. If we continue to move forward, I'm afraid we won't be able to return to our camp before dark." Chiyu said, "Let's continue to move forward. I didn't plan to return to the camp tonight anyway." Yan Xiaoi said, "Boss Chi Chongbao, if we don't return to the camp, are we going to live on the snow mountain? Even if we can hold on, I'm afraid that the members of each team will not be able to hold on. It's too cold in the mountains, especially at night. I'm afraid that everyone will not be able to hold on." Chiyu patted Yan Xiaoi's shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I have a plan." Because his strength was originally not strong, during this month of training, Yan Xiaoi had made great progress. At this time, he had already reached the 4-cloud level, and in terms of actual combat experience, He was much stronger than before. He had already begun to use his Zodiac sheep ability in battle. Although most of them were support skills, sometimes it was the support skills that could determine the outcome of the whole battle. Chi-Yu closed his eyes and condensed his spiritual power in a certain direction. His huge spiritual power quickly connected to the place he wanted to contact. After doing this, he also sat cross-legged on the ground and began to cultivate. He wasn't doing this because he had consumed too much energy, but he wanted to make use of this short period of time to better cultivate. Although his strength could not be greatly improved in a short period of time, as the saying goes, many a little makes a mickle. Chi-Yu had already developed this good habit of cultivating at all times. Moreover, there were still many things waiting for him to do today, and his own energy was the key to supporting himself. When everyone had just rested for about half an hour, the Zodiac Guardian warriors suddenly opened their eyes at the same time. Ryue and Su Dong floated up from the ground almost at the same time. After completing their origin mutation in an instant, they spread their wings and floated up into the sky. The other Zodiac Guardian warriors gathered together in a fan shape, each raising their own thundercloud force, as if they were waiting for something. The fan shape they formed was just right to protect the members of the Zodiac Guardian teams, so that they would not be affected when they encountered danger. Ryu, who was in the sky, let out a loud dragon roar, as if she was provoking something. The Zodiac Guardian God warriors below almost completed the origin mutation at the same time. After a month of training, all the Zodiac Guardian God warriors could at least complete the first stage of origin mutation. In other words, everyone's strength had increased to the 3 clouds. It could be seen how great the change was for them in the past month. Chi-Yu was the last to stand up from the ground and said calmly, "Everyone, stop fighting. It's not an enemy." The surrounding Zodiac Guardian warriors couldn't help but be stunned, because they all felt that the aura that was constantly approaching was very familiar. Why did Chi-Yu say that it was not an enemy? Although Chi-Yu's voice was very soft, it clearly reached everyone's ears. In the sky, Su Dong was still hesitating, but Ryue had already floated down and landed beside Chi-Yu. At this moment, 2 dragon roars simultaneously rang out from the distance. One was black and the other was white. 2 enormous figures were rapidly approaching from the distance. It was the twin black and white dragons that had ambushed the 12 Zodiac teams countless times over the past month. A faint smile appeared in Chi-Yu's eyes as he said, "Now I can tell everyone that they are not our enemies, but training partners that have been accompanying you all this time." Apart from Ryue and Snow Girl, the rest of the Zodiac Guardian warriors couldn't help but be shocked. They looked at Chi-Yu with their mouths agape, then looked at the black and white twin dragons that were rapidly approaching them, not knowing what to say. Chi-Yu smiled faintly and said, "What? You don't believe me? Don't you think that for the past month, although they have been harassing you all, but in the battles with them, who among you has suffered any real harm? Perhaps now they are no longer able to do anything to you, but what about at the beginning of the month? Who among you had the confidence to deal with their attacks? You must know that at that time, the cooperation between you all was too poor. On the first day, if they hadn't retreated, I'm afraid that your team of more than 100 members would have been completely annihilated." At this moment, the Zodiac Guardian warriors gradually understood. Looking at the enigmatic smile on Chi-Yu's face, they couldn't help but smile wryly at each other. It turned out that all of this was planned by Chi-Yu. No wonder he always had a card up his sleeve. It turned out that these 2 powerful ominous beasts were actually his doing. Yan Xiaoi cried out involuntarily, "Heavens! Boss, how did you do it? How could you find such powerful sparring partners?" Chi-Yu smiled faintly and said, "Have you forgotten? I've come to this era before you. Do you think that I've been here for nothing? The black dragon and the white dragon are both my friends and my companions. They've saved my life before, and they've come." At this time, the huge bodies of the black and white dragons had already appeared in everyone's line of sight. The members of the 12 Zodiac teams, who were previously in the middle of cultivating, also felt the aura of the black and white dragons due to the close distance. One by one, they immediately jumped up from the ground and emitted their own energy as they stared at the black and white dragons. Under the leadership of the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors, they were no longer afraid of the black and white dragons. Chi-Yu repeated what he had said to the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors to the 12 Zodiac teams, and then walked straight towards the black and white dragons. Black Dragon lowered his head, and when Chi-Yu walked in front of him, he couldn't help but rub his body a few times. Chi-Yu patted Black Dragon's head and said with a smile, "Big brother, you've really worked hard these past few days." Black Dragon chuckled, and under everyone's shocked gazes he said, "It's not hard at all. If I could continue working hard like this, I'd be looking forward to it." For the past month, fighting with the 12 Zodiac teams had also helped him gain combat experience. Moreover, every day, Chi-Yu used his own energy to support him and White Dragon in harassing the 12 Zodiac teams. Imperceptibly, Chi-Yu's energy had a certain effect on their bodies, causing the strength of the black and white dragons to improve significantly. Compared to when they usually cultivated alone, they were many times stronger. Smiling faintly, Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a gentle light. "I'm afraid there won't be such an opportunity in the future. For the rest of the journey, I'll have to rely on you two to lead the way." Black Dragon said, "No problem, we're here." Chi-Yu turned to the 12 Zodiac teams and said indifferently, "If anyone is dissatisfied with the black and white dragon's attack on you, wait until the end of this training. Alright, let's move on. If anyone's physical strength can't hold on, let me know immediately. Don't force yourself. Try to maintain your body heat as much as possible. There's still a long way to go." Who would be dissatisfied? When they first found out that the black and white dragons were Chi-Yu's friends, they might have been a little dissatisfied. However, when they thought about it carefully, throughout the training, it was indeed as Chi-Yu had said. Although the black and white dragons had pushed them to the brink of death time and time again, they had never really hurt them. Just as Chi-Yu said, the black and white dragons were actually their sparring partners. Where could they find such good sparring partners? Moreover, even if they were dissatisfied, who would dare to bring it up to Chi-Yu? In the hearts of every member of the 12 Zodiac teams, Chi-Yu had become even more unfathomable. More than 100 people continued on their journey. This time, their speed was a little faster than before. With the black and white dragons leading the way, no one dared to relax. Even though exhaustion was constantly attacking their bodies, they gritted their teeth and endured it. A month of training. A month of training had long nurtured their persevering character. When the sun gradually set in the west and the moon rose quietly, the 12 Zodiac teams had already been climbing the Kunlun Mountains for a whole day. They had only rested 3 times, and each time they rested for less than an hour. During this time, they had eaten fruits to appease their hunger. When they were thirsty, they would randomly pick up some ice and snow from the ground and stuff it into their mouth. When they were tired, they would use the needles they carried with them to prick the thickest parts of their bodies. Until now, although everyone felt dehydrated, no one had brought it up to Chi-Yu. That was until this afternoon, when they had been climbing mountains that were more than 6,000 meters above sea level. Altitude sickness alone was not something that ordinary people could withstand. Guan Ping quickened his pace and flew to Chi-Yu's side. He whispered, "Boss, I'm afraid that the teams can't hold on any longer. In such cold weather and at such a high altitude, I'm afraid that pulmonary edema will appear if we continue. It's already dark. Why don't we find a place to temporarily set up camp and let Xiao-Yi treat everyone, or use your nature energy? Only in this way will there be no sequelae." Chi-Yu glanced at the vast and boundless snow-capped mountains in front of them. He nodded gently and said, "The fact that they have been able to hold on until now has greatly exceeded my expectations. However, we are about to reach our destination. Let them hold on for a while longer. You keep a close eye on them. If anyone's body can't hold on any longer, put him on the back of the black dragons, and let them carry him forward. Guan Ping nodded and said, "All right then, I'll head back to the team first." After another hour of travel, the members of the 12 Zodiac teams, with the exception of the captains, were all in varying degrees of crisis. Some of them had already fallen into a deep slumber. It was also at this time that Qi Yu finally gave the order to stop. Qi Yu floated up and landed on the head of the black dragon. He asked, "Have we arrived?" The black dragon replied, "It's here. Let them get ready." Qi Yu nodded and jumped down from the black dragon's head. He summoned all the Zodiac guardian warriors in front of him and said, "Ruyue, you stay here. Everyone else, follow me down. 10 minutes after we go down, Ruyue will have all the members jump down into the cave at the speed of 1 person per minute. Stick close to the cave wall and slide down. We'll be waiting for you down there. Once you're down there, everyone must raise their strength as much as possible to avoid the cold. Let's go." The black dragon was the first to move, followed by the white dragon. They turned around and suddenly drilled into the ice and snow. As if they didn't encounter any obstacles, the black dragon's huge body disappeared first. A huge black hole appeared on the ground, followed by the white dragon. Qi Yu called out to the Zodiac guardian warriors, and like a slide, they directly jumped down into the cave. His eyes revealed a faint smile as he clasped his hands in front of his chest. They had finally arrived at their destination. He could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The figures of the Zodiac guardian warriors disappeared one by one, but Ruyue didn't dare to be negligent. She activated her dragon's strength and spread it out. Using the dragon wings, she transferred the energy into the body of each member of the 12 Zodiac guardian warriors. Of course, this wasn't an attack, but to help the members of the 12 Zodiac guardian warriors recover their strength as much as possible. Although the Zodiac guardian warriors had some doubts in their hearts, when they entered the ice cave, they had a strange feeling. Each of them had their own ability. After entering the ice cave, they released their own energy, bringing with them a faint light. The entire tunnel was completely made of ice, and in that ice crystal world, different colors of light shone.